when you do amends in ACA, the first person you make amends to is yourself. And then my sponsor said, everyone you think owe you an amends is who you'll end up making an amends to. And then an amends to the inner child. And there's this exercise where in your right hand, you write questions for your inner child, and then in your left hand, you respond. You write a question to your inner child, 5 questions. And for me, I think it was like, what do you want to eat for dinner? Because I was struggling with the eating stuff. And the big thing was just feed yourself the way you would feed a child. The cheat for ACAs is often live as if you were caring for a child.
Wow.
So you would never tell a child
you're reparenting.
You would never tell a child you're not going to eat lunch. You would never tell a child you're not going to brush your teeth this morning. Well, I'm sure it happens. But you would never tell a child you have to hang out with someone that makes you uncomfortable. You have to talk to this person that makes you uncomfortable. You're going to have Diet Coke for dinner. You would never do that to a child, so why would you do that to yourself? So it's that little sneak. And then on my home screen of my phone was a photo of me at like 5. And so I was always kind of just trying to...
So then your left hand, which is your non-dominant hand, so your brain is going to have to do a whole dance.
So I would ask questions so specifically they were about, the first couple were about food. What do you want to eat for dinner? What's your favorite food? And then who do you want to hang out with this weekend? Like who's your best friends? Stuff that was like questions you would more ask a child, and then you respond in your non-dominant hand, and the writing looks like a kid's writing. And I instantly just started sobbing.
Wow.
And I learned about the tool of scheduling when to worry about something. Instead of just going, I need to worry about da-da-da. You go like, you know what? December 1st, I'm going to start worrying about this thing. And I will make a decision by December 15th.
Right. Or my favorite is you can worry about that for 20 minutes today, and then you do not worry about it again today.
And maybe there's a lot of voices in my head that aren't mine, positive and negative. So I can just go like, I'm not stupid, I'm not ugly, I'm not this, I'm not... Like, those are just like voices that I heard. It's like a shitty radio station in the back.
It's Mayim Bialik's breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. Because she knows a thing or two. And now she's gonna break down. It's a breakdown. She's gonna break it down.
Hi, I'm Mayim Bialik.
I'm Jonathan Cohen.
And welcome to our breakdown. This is the place where we break things down so you don't have to. The person that we are having on today, I couldn't break all the things down even if I tried forever.
This is a long one, but there's so much good stuff here. Every time we think it's ramping down, there's just like more revelations. Mayim, you talk about something that you have never spoken about in all the episodes that we have done so far. I learned something new about you today.
We talked to Whitney Cummings. She's a comedian, actor, writer, producer. She's all the things, an entrepreneur. She's a host of the hit podcast, Good For You. Not only did she create and star in the NBC series Whitney, as that is her name, she's the co-creator and co-writer of Two Broke Girls, which you may have enjoyed, the Emmy-nominated CBS comedy series that went for a million years. She's got a ton of stand-up specials. Her most recent stand-up special just launched last week. It's available on oftv.com. It's totally free, which is super awesome. So check that out. It's hilarious. She is hilarious. But more importantly, she is very deep. She has done a lot of work on herself. She is open to talking about everything from eating disorders, codependency, growing up in alcoholism, sex abuse, like what she sought in relationships, what she got right, what she got wrong, why and how she decided to get pregnant. She talks about everything.
We also get universal manifestation, ancestral curses, scheduling worrying so that you're not worrying now, but you can worry later because it's easier that way.
She's going to tell us all about it. It's really, really our joy to welcome Whitney Cummings to The Breakdown. Break it down. Whitney Cummings, welcome to The Breakdown.
Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have you here.
I'm very intimidated to be here.
Why?
I just feel like, you'll tell me if this is true. When you say an emotion, you automatically dissipate it a little bit. So I like to just say it.
I dissipate it, or one dissipates it?
Like when you say I'm scared, you're automatically less scared.
Oh, got it.
When you say I'm intimidated, you're
I
automatically
thought you'd have some cool answer like, well, you and Jonathan have such a blah, blah, blah. No, you just mean generally speaking.
I'm intimidated by you. Jonathan, not as much at the moment, but...
We'll work on that.
You're intimidated by his beard.
But yes, that beard there's fake. It's fine. It's fake. So I'm not intimidated by something that glues on his Santa Claus beard that he got from Oz on Sunset.
What?
Okay, so Look, I don't buy that for a second. But
You made the Canadian blush. Look at him.
I have to come in person so that she can, tug on it and see
is that
its
a string on the
legitimacy.
side or those Apple headphones? It looks like the little plastic string. But it's a power move to the way that he's putting the lab it's like if a woman were to put their boobs in the foreground. I mean, it really is. You're not shying away from it. I do feel like the beard is the boobs for men at this point.
For Jonathan, it is.
Yeah, like you know what you're doing.
Oh my God, my head hurts.
I appreciate it. I have that effect on people.
We are pleasantly intimidated by you, meaning you have a really incredible podcast.
Thank you.
And I'd like for you to talk a little bit about it. It's called Good For You, which is I love a name that has two meanings.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's like, it's good for you and also like good for you.
It's a Rorschach test.
Right.
Whatever someone thinks it is says more about them.
And also good for you could also be like legitimately like good for you. But also a lot of times it's like, good for you.
It's also like good for you.
Yeah.
Like I hope this podcast is like good for you.
Okay. So you started it in 2019.
Right before the pandemic, like 2 months probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah. It was, it's interesting. I'm a fan of your podcast.
Thank you. We started after.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. No, I was more self-destructive. I did it when I had other career options. It wasn't made at like a smart time, like during the pandemic. But, it's interesting. Like as someone that kind of talks for a living, it consumes me with shame a lot because I have like my biggest fear is being boring or like bombing. And sometimes I feel like I'm just like, am I just like bombing for 2 hours? Like stand-ups, like we spent 2 years writing this, machine gun, like laugh every 20 seconds thing. We got on stage, like, and then once a year you see the thing that we worked on for 2 years. And this whole thing where it's like, I'm going to roll out of bed and just kind of like, I had to really work on the fact that like, I'm enough. Like, this is enough. Like me just not being on and having all these perfect jokes. Like this might just be enough. I might be inherently interesting and worth listening to. And if you're not into it, fine. I mean, it is weird that, I really enjoy podcasting, but like women talking for 2 hours, like it's shocking to me that that's a business. It is shocking, but.
Well, I'm glad because it's most of our identity.
Yeah.
And so we might as well be able to turn it into something.
Yeah. So it's, I think for me, it's like, I always feel like I get a little shame when I overshare. But if I'm doing it as of service on a podcast, I feel like it's okay.
You said that kind of you're like a big fear. I want to give you a coaster. Hold on. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, our table is.
It's all I've been thinking about.
Our table is like not in great shape, mostly because of me.
The
but I figured like
is just his beard. Unbelievable. Unreal.
There's actually 4 different coasters.
I'm calling HR. Okay, this is a lot.
It was her doing. It was all her.
It was my doing. Anyway, you said something about one of your biggest fears, or sometimes we call them organizing principles, right?
Yeah.
Is that like I'm whatever, I'm boring, I'm unlovable, whatever it is. But you mentioned like being boring, like. Do you remember that from when you were young? Like, is it part of why you started being funny?
Absolutely. I remember growing up in an alcoholic home, which for people listening, I think a lot of people think, I don't have to tell you this, but think like, oh, wine, alcohol. In order for alcoholism to be present, alcohol doesn't always have to be present, So there can be addiction to tidying up, to cooking, to perfection, to cheating, to gambling, to all kinds of things.
Right.
And I was
Sorry, we just went from tidying up to gambling.
Which is a form
So some have programs and some don't have programs, but okay.
Oh, I've been to Workaholics Anonymous meetings.
Yep.
Crafting is a big one.
Right.
Cleaning.
Right.
And a lot of times, this is fascinating to me, a couple of the addictions boil down to a gambling addiction, like social media.
Correct.
It's basically a slot machine at this point. You're just playing to try to get that hit.
Well, it's the God-shaped hole, but yes. So anyway, growing up in alcoholism, which is it can be an umbrella term,
right?
But typically, yes, it's.
I couldn't compete with the substances my parents were addicted to, so I always had a very short amount of time to get their attention, to try to entertain them. And when someone's drunk, it's very hard to like get them to pick you, So I was always competing with alcohol, with my dad's other mistresses, whatever it was. But I also remember. A moment specifically, and I had this recently, and I did an EMDR session on something, and it came up where I remember going out to try to get my dad's attention. I was like, whatever, maybe 5, 6, and I went out and was like, "Hey, Dad, something," and he was watching TV, And I remember walking away and going, that didn't go well. And I remember being like, okay, next time you're going to walk out like this, and then you're going to do this, and you're going to do an impression of Rodney Dangerfield because he's watching Rodney Dangerfield. And I just remember thinking like he would watch SNL and he would laugh. And I remember just going like, I got to get in the box. Like I got to get in that box. That's what I have to do. So I got obsessed with like getting on television and being entertaining or perfect. The other way that I would get attention is to be perfect and sometimes being sick or hurt. So when I was a kid, sometimes I would like fake being sick or fake an injury or, you know, shit like that. But thankfully the ones that stuck were more, because then I realized that wasn't working. Now I need to pretend I'm never hurt. You know, I have to totally self-deprive and totally be needless, wantless, you know, but like being perfect and then being entertaining.
Talk to me a little bit about sort of competing with the TV. I think that's a really interesting thing. You know, I think, I mean, I'm just like sort of like rewinding the tape of like, what did it look like, you know, in my home? And I'm thinking, you know, a lot of people might be doing the same. You know, there's a lot of things we compete with, especially when our parents have other issues, right? Other things. What do you think, what was TV for your dad in terms of like, what did you see happening?
That's fascinating. It's interesting because I think it was his comic relief. Like things were always really rough, really hectic, but what we did have was comic relief, always. A lot of it was probably like, you would look back and say emotional abuse. Like our family would roast each other really hard. Like holidays were always like really, like you would feel it as a child too. You would feel like kids know when something's passive aggressive. They don't know what it is, but they know when someone's like, can you pass the salt the way you pass around all your wives, America? Like you're like, I know that wasn't nice. Like I know those two adults that were doing those jabs with all that like tension underneath. Like I know, like, am I supposed to be laughing? And the adults are laughing way too hard. But I think for him it was you know, he was a very, you know, plagued with addiction, but comedy was kind of his anesthesia. Like he would watch SNL, Land Shark, like he would pick me up from school and, you know, when he did show up, you know, I think it was a tool that he used maybe to make people forget about the bad things that he did. I think comedy can be used responsibly and irresponsibly, but when someone has that kind of charm, he also looked exactly like Dan Aykroyd, which was just a weird coincidence.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
People thought he was Dan Aykroyd and he would like do cone heads. Like he would do it at restaurants and he would sign autographs. So I thought my dad was Dan Aykroyd till I was like 13, which is a whole other random thing. But he would do like Blues Brothers impressions when he would pick me up from school. He would do I don't know if you've seen Three Amigos, but when, you know, Steve Martin's like, look up here, look, he would like hide behind car, you know, and I would forget about the fact that he was 3 hours late. You know, so it was sort of this comedy was sort of used to like iron out the trauma in a way and make us forget it. And that's a tool that I absorbed too. Like when things are rough or sad, I tend to make jokes for better or for worse. Maybe it gave me sort of an emotional dyslexia or whatever, but I think it was just all of our family's way of just brushing off really serious stuff. So I guess he was, you know, he wasn't really a drinker. My mom would drink, but he was watching TV and maybe that was his, drug, comedy.
My Bialik's Breakdown is supported by BetterHelp. Many of us look forward to end-of-year season holiday gatherings, but not all of us. A lot of us may also struggle with the seasonal blues and the stress that comes with preparing for the holiday season. This time of year can be a lot. It's natural to feel some sadness or anxiety about it. But adding something new and something positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. I suggest therapy. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all of the stress and change, something to look forward to. For me, it's something that helps me feel grounded, helps me literally role play different situations that might happen at parties that I'm nervous about and family gatherings. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try right now. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch at any time for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/break today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/break. You have a half brother?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am.
Sorry, I say sir. I just always say yes, sir. Can I tell you something? I was talking about this the other day. When I say yes, ma'am, women go like, oh, so I'm old? So I just started saying yes, sir to everyone.
All right.
Sorry.
I mean,
triggered. That's even worse.
I'm losing my vision and my hearing, so I think I'm a ma'am. Question. So you had a half A half older brother. So are you the middle?
Youngest and an accident.
Oh,
13
okay, well,
months.
you know.
Birth order
Okay,
is
got it.
a game changer.
Well, so tell me about birth order, because I'm in homes like this, I'm always very curious. Where does everyone fall in?
Yep.
Because there's, we all have different personalities we take on. And, my brother was very like head in a comic book. Like, I don't see anything.
Yep.
Like, so you were the baby.
Yep. I was the baby. And when you do the math, I'm 13 months younger. So I was clearly, they called me the surprise, but I was obviously.
That's practically Irish twins.
An accident. And I think with that, a lot of, overachievers that I know are the youngest because they had to fight really hard to fit into an already established system. You have to, and oftentimes you are a surprise or an accident.
Yeah.
And I think I knew.
Or you're also a hope. You're a failed hope.
Oh, yeah, like this will save our marriage. And I didn't. So it was like, you were supposed to save our marriage and you didn't. You little monster.
No pressure.
Yeah,
no pressure at all.
Totally.
He's the youngest of three. So.
Okay, you get it. So it's like you're coming into something. And then also by the time I don't have to, this was definitely not your experience. I'm a big fan of reading all your parenting stuff and all your parenting videos and stuff. But it's like by the time you get to the third kid, it's like, she's fine.
Like
she's
there
fine.
are no photos of that child.
Like my hair is crazy. Have you ever looked at your school photos? Like I have food on my face. Like I have like shit like sticks in my hair. Like I'm like, you guys, it's very clear from a very early age that I was not planned and that I was maybe a burden. I came into, a family, there's a lot of borderline personality disorder and histrionic shit. So me having needs was very exhausting and overwhelming to my mom. And I felt it right away. I felt she would cry a lot. She was always overwhelmed. The permission slip was never signed. I was always the kid at school that didn't have the permission slip. I didn't have the check for the field trip. My lunch bag was always wet. Like I always just was like this mess. And, so I think that you kind of know that as a kid. I don't know if you knew, if you were planned or what, but I remember being like, you got to earn your place here. Like you can't cause any trouble. You can't need too much. Like I caught on fire when I was a kid because I was like, I need to cook dinner for myself, and I like got on the stove and started cooking for myself, honestly. Like, so I was also left alone a lot. My mom worked and I'm so grateful that I got to see a mom work really hard. But she was overwhelmed and she was exhausted. And that generation of women were trying to do both. And I always felt like I was stressing everybody out and that I was a burden and I was a hassle.
Was your brother, he how much older was he?
He's older half.
So was he your mom's previous, your dad's previous?
Dad's previous.
Okay, so then how much older than you?
He's 12 years older.
Oh,
yeah,
so
he's much older.
There's something that I notice about the way you speak, which reminds me of me in the warmest way. But I wonder, Jonathan, if you've noticed it, you know a lot of things about the diagnoses in your home. You know a lot about your stuff. You've got like the ability to name what's going on for you. And I wonder, I'm not accusing you of this, but
Please.
I'm often accused of like
guilty.
Pathologizing and like you're making too much of it and like you don't know. What is your sort of take on when this sort of self-awareness kicked in? Was it out of necessity? Meaning, did it look you in the face and you were like, oh no, I have to look at this? How did you get to know all the things about yourself that you know?
That's a great question because I'm really glad I have the opportunity to answer it because I feel like sometimes I sound like such a know-it-all, like obnoxious know-it-all. And I'm sure tomorrow a bunch of things will happen. And I'm like, I was totally wrong yesterday about all of that. And, and so for me, one of my biggest character defects in my program, which is ACA, Adult Children Alcoholic, mostly like I've played around in the the CODA rooms as well, Codependence Anonymous rooms, some other stuff.
And ACA is kind of an offshoot of Al-Anon.
Yes.
Meaning Al-Anon, you'll often meet people who have spouses, often children, but if you want to go to meetings where specifically it's people who their primary qualifier is a parent, that's what ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics meetings are for.
You basically were raised in a chaotic environment. You only know how to care for yourself the way your parents cared for you. You essentially sort of developed all these coping mechanisms to cope with a chaotic environment that worked really well when you were a kid. Right. And then you grow up and all of a sudden they're not working so well. So it's like you're a parentified child. You were the kid that had to kind of take care of everything. You had to take care of yourself too much. We develop these characteristics that we call like the 3 M's: mothering, micromanaging, and martyring. Like we think we have to parent other adults.
I have a PhD in that.
I know, obsessed with you.
In the 3 M's.
Yeah. And so for me, one of my issues was I would actually chronically minimize instead of pathologize at all. You know, it was just sort of everything's fine. This is how everybody is. Or like, I can take it. I can handle it. Like, I'm the strong one. Everyone else is allowed to be a mess. And I can just sort of hold it in. You know, we call ourselves the exploding doormats, you know,
Wow.
you know, kind of thing. Sort of, it's like I have all this anger and also a complete lack of self-care and total self-deprivation. Like, I didn't floss before I, you know, came into this program. I was so busy taking care of everybody else and martyring myself on other people. You know, you sort of, your self-esteem is derived from how useful you are to other people. You're attracted to sort of people that you can rescue or fix. You know, it's like if you're, you know, in AA or NA, you're addicted to someone, you know, you're addicted to a substance. But if you're in ACA, you're addicted to someone who's addicted to a substance, you know? So it's like, I need to get this person sober. And I'm like learning Spanish to learn how to fight with drug dealers. You know, it's just total chaos. And just as I love you and I just love the work that you've done. And
Thank you.
You're like, I'm a giant fan. Definitely dressed as Blossom like 4 years in a row as a kid. But now that if you have this, like, you're like a doctorate in neuroscience, but also like our addiction is the internal drug cabinet, adrenaline, cortisol. So it's like, you know, we're the people that are just like, why is everyone so dramatic? It's like, well, why did I subconsciously gravitate towards really dramatic situations to get that hit of adrenaline? Because that's my neurochemical comfort zone from when I was a kid. Or it was like in utero, I became addicted to it. You know, the way a crack baby is addicted to crack when they're born. And so so I had a couple family members like go into rehab, you know, kind of thing. And then I'm going to the rehab, you know, paying for it, bringing Nutri-Grain bars, bringing sweaters, you know, and they're like, you also, I'm leaving my work, abandoning myself, my personal life to try to help this person get sober.
So that was when it was pointed out to you.
There's a program for you too. You didn't get out unscathed. And I'm like, what do you mean? But I'm perfect. Like, all I do is love people and help people. And I drive people to the airport I hardly know. And I'll like help someone move even after they've cheated on. Like, I'm the best. Like, I don't. And then I was like, oh, Al-Anon. I'm going to go to Al-Anon. That's going to teach me how to get them sober. I'm in. So I thought I was going to Al-Anon to learn how to better control the alcoholic.
Yeah, which, just like disclaimer, Al-Anon is actually not the place you go to get people sober. It's the place to put the focus on yourself. But many of us go and we're like, if they just stop using drinking being, I'll be fine.
Totally. So it's like we meddle in other, they're basically like, you're hurting this person. You're enabling this person. Like, you actually need to give them a consequence in the dignity of their own experience and remove yourself, because this person might be addicted to substances, but you're addicted to all the adrenaline and people pleasing and all your insecure bullshit too. Like, you guys came from the same home. Like, there's a program for you too. And I remember going into Al-Anon for the first couple meetings, I was just like, I'm too busy for this. I don't belong here. Like, everyone's like got their, you know, salad, you know, everyone's got their water flask, and, you know, everyone's so in there.
Also, they're in a very good mood in Al-Anon. And I was like, I don't feel good. Why are you all hugging each other?
I don't buy it. Like, I just didn't buy it. And then I had some, you know, religious stuff. I'm now totally like got it out. But at the time.
You mean you didn't like this higher power notion, which is the structure of the 12-step
Well, they
programs.
were just like, my God. And I was like, I was so emotionally immature at the time. And I didn't realize that, because when you're a parentified child, everyone's telling you, you're such an old soul. You're so mature for your age. You're so, you know. And so I really thought I had it together. And I found myself also going into the rooms. A big thing with, you know, Al-Anons and ACAs were very judgy. You know, it was, I went in being like, ugh, this person in their sneakers and this person in their hoodie and da da da.
Well, we don't think of it as being judgy. We are discriminating and simply know better.
I'm helping you.
That's right.
If you could just broadcast my inner monologue, all of your lives would be fixed. You know? So it's just kind of, I went in and I found myself focusing on other people instead of myself and why I needed to be there. And then the selfishness of someone would share it. I'd be like, well, that's not my experience.
We call that looking for the differences, not the similarities.
Yeah, I don't need to be here because, like, I'm not from Pensacola. So it's obviously like I don't need to be here, you guys. And then
my favorite tool is comparing my insides to other people's outsides, which I literally did for approximately 16 years. 16 years, I think. That's literally like, however horrible I feel and how I'm thinking, because her teeth are nice. And I'm talking about your teeth. That person is in a better place in life, and I will never be like. That's the compare and despair. I mean, I can go deep. Anyway,
I was
back
called
to
Horseface Cummings. I mean,
Stop
still am
it.
too. You need to look at my Reddit chats. Yeah, I would do anything for your
I
teeth.
don't even know what Reddit is.
Okay, let's keep it that way.
That's what I was going to say. You can't find Reddit.
And so I found myself,
So you were an adult when you had you been to therapy?
I was not emotionally, I was an adult child.
No, but I'm saying, had you been to therapy? Like, what was high school like with this set of tools?
Just before we go into high school, how's your Spanish now?
No bueno, dude. I can say, like, does the cocaine have fentanyl in it? Like, that's pretty much, and is there an ATM close by? But he's a musician. He can't die. He's gonna make it. He just signed with Gersh. Like, I don't like, it's not the phrases I can say really say a lot about.
We had a really shitty morning, and this is really helping me and Valerie.
Sorry.
So we appreciate it. What was high school like with this set of? Because I mean, I know what I was like. What were you like in high school? Were you funny, pretty, and like getting by with a lot of charm?
And that's fascinating. No, it is. I was a full adult in high school in my head, and I recently had a friend of mine that I went to high school with is a really successful actress, and she came on my podcast, and we had this great podcast that was like, I was jealous of you. I was jealous. We had this great. And I was a full adult. I was working. I also had a really severe eating disorder. So I had isolated myself entirely. I would eat in my car. I was very overachieving. I was staying after school, had to get the, perfect grades. I also grew up without money. I knew I was going to have to pay for myself. I at a very early age, like started working and started being like, I have to leave school early because I have to earn money, because there was so much money stress around my house, even though ostensibly it seemed like because we had nice things, there was shopping addiction. Which is this weird, like, you don't think until later, like, oh, my mom had an eating disorder and a shopping addiction. That's such a crazy thing.
I'm not diagnosing your mother, but borderline personality disorder, you'll often see co-addiction or shopping addiction in addition to a lot of the behavioral stuff. So you mentioned BPD, so I just figured I'd mention that. Shopping addiction, it's a real thing. It's an adrenaline thing.
I probably have it.
Yeah.
Thank God it's Etsy, though. It's all like weird haunted dolls. Then you were talking about hoarding on a podcast recently. I found really, really fascinating of, the difference between collecting and hoarding is if you can throw it away.
Right.
I just throw it away in like the junk room.
Right.
And
That's not throwing it away, but okay.
Just putting it on eBay to get money for it, to buy more things, does that count? I'm like, my brain wants to find a way. But and I remember, my mom's, when you have a shopping addiction and you don't have money, things are so valuable and you're a kid and you're just like, and she would cry and scream over things. I remember learning things are really valuable. I was also taught by her, your appearance is the most important thing. She grew, it was a lot. She, never had food in the fridge. And she always said to other people when they said, you look great, she'd be like, I just have to lose that 5 pounds. Like, it's just something that she would say all the time. And I'm sure that she didn't have the tools yet to know that your kid is just listening to that. I guess it was also eating disorders, to my understanding, boiled down to a control addiction and a way to isolate. So for me, it was just about being able to kind of hide. So I wasn't very social. I was pretty scared of people, but I probably masqueraded as incredibly confident, which is a lot of times my thing is that I'm terrified, but like people are like, she's such a bitch who like doesn't want to be here. And I'm like, I don't deserve to be here, but I just look like So
were you funny? No. You hadn't found your funny?
No, I still don't know how I got, people just started laughing when I was being dead serious. Like I would just, my point of view on whatever the thing was, people would start laughing and I'd be like, why are you laughing? Like I'm dead serious. Even as a kid, I'd be making my case for something I wanted and everyone would laugh. And I'm like, I'm serious. Like, so I still am kind of like, I know how to write jokes, obviously. I know how to do what I do, but I think it's just.
When did your eating disorder start? I'm curious how young you found something because, we look for something to kind of be the thing that we can control or a place to hide. And a lot of times, my experience with, we have a lot of similar, rooms that we sit in. My experience is like, there's a tremendous amount of mental energy that you have to use up when you are going to binge or when you're going to, like it literally, it's like it really is. It's like a constant dialogue.
Full-time job.
Yeah. So how young did that become part of your life?
My first addiction, if I'm going to be honest, I think was fantasy. So when I went into the SLAA rooms, people talking about fantasy and intrigue, and
That's
I was
Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous.
And I was like, that's it. The sex with strangers thing, don't get it. I'm just too shy and like germophobic or something, like no judgment on it. It just wasn't my thing. Love, absolutely, did those steps later. But fantasy, I would check out. This is so embarrassing. I would also fully like think I was on Oprah. I would be on Oprah in my head. I would be doing all the stuff I knew I would have to do in the TV to get my dad's attention. I was doing interviews with myself. I was writing in journals as other people. I was fantasizing that I had different parents. Like I would try to be like Anne of Green Gables and I'm, whatever, which that story doesn't hold up, but that's another thing. It's like a brother and a sister that adopts a kid. It's just like, I don't know.
Don't be judgy.
Whatever. I'm not about banning books. That one, I feel like we should just take another gander at. And so, and I would like check out into fantasy. I would pretend I was in commercials. Like when I would eat, so embarrassing. I would like roll up. I mean, because you were literally on TV, I definitely would like dance on a piano if I saw one and pretend I was you.
What's the difference between imagination and fantasy? Like, what is it for you?
Ooh, I think imagination is like creativity of making something original, knowing it's you, whereas fantasy is I don't want to be in this body. I'm someone else. I would pretend I was in commercials. Like when I would eat, I would like roll up my food and like take a bite to a fake camera. That's not creative. That's bonkers.
Well, so now, I mean, I remember doing that at many family dinners. And I would, I think dinners were probably, I mean, sometimes I remember, good conversation, but there's a tension. And I'm thinking like, there obviously wasn't a lot going on if I had an entire commercial that I was recording in my head while I'm eating dinner. Like, that's a lot. Like, I remember it a lot. And I'm thinking that must have been a lot of dead space that probably just felt so unbearable to be in that I made my own thing.
You've never mentioned that in all of our talking. And I think it's a fascinating line between imagination, fantasy, and where fantasy goes into disassociation and escape.
And I think you just hit the nail on the head. And I think the difference is probably more the end result of whereas creativity yields some kind of benefit in the long run, whereas fantasy is you're just stopping your life to disassociate and check out. Creativity is maybe to check in, and fantasy is maybe to check out.
There's something in that, because the way you're talking about it, Whitney, is like a bit of a negative connotation, like fantasy is to check out, but there has to be a certain level of creativity in that fantasy that both of you two are describing. There's, I'm a mad, like I think there's creativity in any of it, but both of you channeled that fantasy into careers, which, comes with a level of practical application that I think differentiates it between total disassociation.
I know, and I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I kind of call it trauma privilege, once you've sort of done let me heal the invisible wounds, let me work on it. Oh, I actually have a couple of these like superpowers and advantages that a lot of my friends that were loved and like read to or whatever, or had some kind of stability and predictability and didn't have to use fantasy to check out before they had some kind of drug. They don't have that. And so I can kind of now be in that radical forgiveness and radical gratitude of like, adversity yielded some pretty cool things. So yeah, that is one of them.
Okay, so moving forward on the addiction train,
or the eating disorder train.
So that was like you said, like if you had to say like your first, and also like I don't want people to be like children don't have addictions. Yes, they do, and also like those are if you don't want to call it that. It's the things that we do to cope with discomfort. And every child has discomfort at some level.
Yep.
And depending on the resources you're given, depending on the genetics you're given, depending on what is modeled for you, you can sometimes recruit resources to cope with things that are complicated. But in the kind of situation that you're talking about and that I think a lot of people grew up in, even if they're not ready to sort of go there and be in full admission of it, there's a lot of things we will do to try and fill it in.
You've talked about this, not to interrupt. I think it was in your conversation with Natasha Leggero, where when a kid is, or no, it was the psychiatrist that the Instagram. She's really big on Instagram, and her name's escaping me.
Dr. Jenny.
Apologies, I think so. Blonde.
Dr. Becky.
Dr. Becky.
Yes, about how
parenting.
When a kid is, a
Dr.
kid's
Becky.
like having a tantrum and upset, instead of going, you're fine, because the parent doesn't want to tolerate the discomfort or you don't want your kid to be in pain. I had so much of that. You're fine, get up, you're fine.
Yeah.
And I just was like, you always have to be fine. But I didn't feel fine inside. So I had to find other little sneaky things.
Right.
Definitely before food restriction was binging. And I was also, people talk about abuse, and of course that was there. And I don't mean to over pathologize. I just have to acknowledge it because then I'm just a liar. But there was a lot of neglect too. I was also just alone a lot, and so the cereal boxes, like this was before Instagram, whatever, the crosswords on the back of the Fruit Loops. Like I would eat the whole thing of Fruit Loops. Like I would, the whole box of fruit my dad would buy in bulk, and I would just eat the whole thing of Cheerios, and then kind of incapacitate myself. And that gave me an excuse to just be in bed. And like, that's why I'm not going out to play. That's why these kids don't like me. I can get ahead of it. I'm incapacitated. So if they don't ask me to play, I didn't want to do it anyway, or I can't anyway. So it gave me sort of an excuse to not socialize with other kids and gave me an out when they didn't ask me. Like I wasn't invited to that sleepover, but like I couldn't anyway because of this kind of thing. So that was, I think binging was definitely first. There was also a lot because I was sent to live somewhere else for a while when I was like 10 or 11.
Yes.
Lived with an aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, exactly. And there was a lot of finish everything on your plate and you're not leaving until you finish that entire glass of milk.
And I know a lot of people are saying like, but that's a good rule. But for some children, depending on your template, that kind of messaging is very, very intrusive and problematic. And you don't know what kid you're looking at when you tell them to finish what's on their plate. Some kids might be like, all right, and never think about it again.
And you don't know what I just snuck an hour earlier.
That's right.
Because I just ate a whole box of Fruit Loops that you don't know about. So there, I think most of our, probably parents did that of you're finishing everything on your plate. We didn't have money, so I got it. But I didn't make the plate. If I'm going to finish everything on it, can I pick what goes on it at least? So it was a lot of people it was, I think, force feeding, which people thought was love or thought was like smart discipline. But like, imagine drinking a glass of whole milk. Like, it's just crazy.
Also, it expands in your belly.
It's so gross.
I'm allergic, so yes.
Yeah, so I just am like, so there was a little bit of that, if I'm going to be honest. So I'm sure there's, you or someone smarter than me can understand the impact that had. So I think then it went into restriction.
Well, of course. Well, you got to balance it out. Restriction. Were you an exercise person?
I would binge. And once I was 20, once I was maybe 16, 17, yes, I would binge and then go on.
Exercise bulimia, is that what they call it?
Like 3-hour walks. And then by the time I got to LA, I was just like at Crunch Fitness just all day.
Can we go back to the fact that you were sent away to live with your aunt at 12 for a second? That we just skipped over.
Might have been good, but very disruptive.
There's a lot I just won't know. And there's a lot my parents have passed. And so, I think it's important, like, this therapist I work with is like, you just need to get information. Like, you just need to get answers of what exactly happened. It could have been someone lost custody of you, or they both lost custody of you, or they separated you for this reason.
You don't remember.
Well, we did like run away from home at like 10, 11, and it was pretty rough and dangerous situations and stuff. So I went to go live on a farm in Roanoke, Virginia, which, sorry to be like the silver lining, third step annoying person, but I was like in a weird way grateful because I got to be live with animals. There's horses and dogs and, but I was sent to live with people that weren't parents. They had never been parents before. So it sort of accelerated my parentified child thing. I also went into a very strict Catholic school right away, halfway through the school, very small sort of town, but got very serious about sports sort of there, but was always like, if I'm just good enough, my dad's going to come back and get me. And it just didn't happen. And they didn't really visit. I was kind of just like sent away. Am I Anne of Green Gables? Wait a minute, you guys, maybe that's why I hate that book so much.
So then you went back home though?
When I was like 15. Yeah. And
but by then it's like.
By then I am like, I only eat raisins and drink Diet Coke. I'm going to be so perfect that that will never happen again. And they're going to regret that they sent me away. And I'm going to like come back the kid that is going to change their dopamine receptors. Like, I just didn't know, as a kid, you don't know that your parents are being run by their own demons and their own trauma and their own.
We also didn't talk about that stuff.
No.
Do you know what led to you being taken back?
I had by that point kind of begged to go back. Like, I think I had been there for a couple of years and then they said, you can live with your mom. I think there's something that not a lot of people talk about. And I don't have the vocabulary for it, but I realized recently, like a lot of my life I've spent in shock. Like we talk about like trauma responses, I've been shocked about it a lot of the times.
It's like flight, fight,
the freeze.
Or freeze.
Because I'm pretty much fight for the most part. Like when shit hits the fan at the dog park, I'm the person who's putting their finger in the dog's buttholes to break up the dog fight.
Is that a thing you have to do?
Yes.
How many times have you had to do that?
Just do one. Just spit on one and one should do. I mean, it depends on the size of the dog, I guess.
I didn't know this.
So
does that work for humans too?
You're going to go over to Israel and just start. Sorry. I'm sorry. I just want to be of service. I just want you guys, I think I know how to solve this problem. Oh gosh.
The reason I asked that though, Whitney, is because I wondered about 15-year-old you, if you felt some sort of agency, like you had participated in being taken back. And, for a kid, like, what does that do to their sense of thinking that they can control an uncontrollable situation?
That's a really good question. And I wish I had a better answer, but it did make me think that I did feel this obligation. A big part of, ACA's struggles is we feel obligated to other people. We feel obligated to go to their parties. We feel this obligatory friendships, even if they deplete us or, whatever, these obligations to say yes to everything.
Wow.
And I
don't know what she's talking about.
The people that I
Whitney, can you put your finger in my tissue?
Break up the fighting in your head. that by then my aunt and uncles wanted me to stay there, and they didn't want me to leave.
we love a dual loyalty situation. We love it. We love not being able to please anyone. So that we have to find a way to please everyone.
So then I've got 4 adults who are getting their emotional needs met by a child, which is just not appropriate. Right. I now know it's an adult. I now know it had nothing to do with me or my sparkling personality. I didn't have one at the time. I was checking out and pretending I was on Oprah. I mean, no one was emotionally attached to the kid who was always thought they were in a commercial. But whatever needs met they were getting from me, right? They were getting their internal needs met by external things. Their codependence. They were trying to caretake me, and I just couldn't grow up. But so I remember hurting them and feeling like I broke their heart and disappointed them. But I also had to go back so that my mom didn't feel like a bad mom. So I just was just like, and then I didn't want to be a bad sister and a bad daughter to my dad. So I'm just kind of like trying to be perfect at all costs. And I think I'm being pulled in a lot of directions. And the only control that I had was like, well, I'm not eating or I'm just going to drink diet soda. I also think moving in with my mom, I lived in an apartment with her. And, I think a lot of people live in apartments. That's, I think, more common than we might think. But we were in a very small space and we were more like girlfriends than parent, daughter. I would drive her places when she wanted to drink and she would have friends over and she was single and she was looking for a man and good for her. But we were more like girlfriends. So, I would come out on a school night and be like, can you guys keep it down? I'm trying to sleep. It was kind of more that. So I think because she restricted her eating, it was sort of how to be friends with her kind of too. It's like, oh,
I have a question. When did your parents pass?
My dad was 5 years ago and my mom was this past January.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Wow.
They were in beds for 10 years. It was
wow. Do you have fond memories? Are there points that you can anchor to? And especially when we do 12-step work, there's a lot of notion of getting the whole story, because sometimes we come in with a very specific story. And, a lot of people, when I hear them share, they're like, I don't want to talk too much about what it used to be like. And I was like, well, you're not my person because I'll talk forever about what it used to be like. But where are those points? And especially now that you are with child, this is now the reckoning that, we get to do as adults. Where are those good points? What are the sweet spots that you can kind of feel linked to.
That's the hardest part about it, is like my mom was hilarious. And I mean, my friends were obsessed with my mom. I was that person where people would come over and be like, is your mom here? Like they'd want to hang out with my mom. She did public relations for Bloomingdale's. She's hilarious. She's smart. She's like gorgeous. She just was like not ready to parent, or had gone through such a brutal divorce herself, was trying to get the next man or trying to have a life and be resilient. My dad was hysterical. Like my dad would, it makes me laugh. He was, a lawyer-ish, it's unclear what exactly, but he would just go into public spaces like malls and he would just like yell things. He would be like, can anyone find an honest man? Is there an honest man? Is there such a thing as an honest man? Like he would just like do shit like that. And it was so embarrassing, but so fun. Like he was just, he had the biggest personality. And I think that's probably why it took me so long to pathologize anything. Because I was like, I have the funniest dad ever. I have the coolest mom ever, but they don't want to hang out with me. So I must be a piece of shit, and they want to hang out with all these other people and everyone else just gravitates toward them. I mean, my dad was like, I remember at a very young age, waitresses just sitting with us. And I just thought it was normal that a waitress would sit down and have your meal with you. Like everyone had I remember my mom worked in public relations in Washington, D.C. and we went to the White House she was invited to the White House and Bill Clinton was like flirting with her. Like I was like it
That's
was
a little bit of a low bar
it's
though.
honestly, let's just be, which is why she was murdered in cold blood. So she knew too much. I never got to see the island. So yeah, to answer your question, like when it was good, there was nothing better, which is probably, it wasn't like, oh, these boring parents that don't want to hang out with me. It was like, I really want to be in your guys' life.
Well, so I think that's sort of where my question goes next. And like, there's so many places I want to go, but I can't, you have so much self-awareness. And I think it's helpful. But the place that I would like you to sort of, give us a little bit of education, codependency has become like one of these words.
Yep.
I group it with like OCD, like I have PTSD. Like some people do, it's a thing.
Yeah.
But you seem to know a lot, about like the specifics and, many people, I mean, I'm just this jerk. A lot of people like they misdefine codependency. They're just like, I really love him. I'm like, that's not codependency. Right. So codependency, the notion that I'm not okay if you're not okay, is one of sort of like the hallmark things. And then what are the lengths that we go to make sure that we're okay, through someone else being okay. But I wonder if you can talk about, because I'm trying to think about, I mean, I don't want to think about myself because I do that all the other hours of the day, but I'm thinking about what you've just described. I'm thinking about that person. And I'm thinking about that person then deserving love, affection, attention. Who do you look for? What does that look like? Where does it go wrong and where does it go right?
Can I say just an addendum to what helped me in the codependence of it all, of the definition?
Yeah. Or I'd love to hear how you define it.
The way you said it was perfect. And I think sometimes the way we define it makes us look like heroes or something. And in the codependence of it all is like, for me, the definition that worked was the inability to tolerate the discomfort of others or perceived discomfort. Right. So it's like someone else is uncomfortable. I have to do whatever I have to do to make them comfortable. But what's more annoying than someone people please? Like it doesn't work. It's never worked. Being helpful doesn't help. And the people that sort of fawn over others, I have to make sure you're okay. I mean, I actually was in the car on the way here and I was like, I didn't bring her a gift. And I was like, that is such progress. Like, because I collect these vintage neuroscience books. And I was like, oh, I should have given her that neuroscience book and she would love it. And I was just like, don't do that.
So and people must be like, why can't you? It's okay to give gifts. But if your intention is that it is a transaction, that I need to endear myself. And this is like, so like, I need to always fawn. For me, it's always like, I'll pay for that. And it's like, well, I don't know that it is my place always, right, to pay for that or to do that. But that notion of, and that's what I was going to say, is a lot of people think that like, I'm codependent. But what this kind of definition is helpful with is, what does my behavior look like, right, in a friendship? It's not just romantic, right? What does it look like if I
work.
Right. It often looks like what you just described, like trying to constantly endear yourself to
Auditioning
others
for approval every day, and that gives them a power that they don't want. And if they do want it,
like you have to need me.
They gotta go. Yes.
Right.
And I'm constantly gonna do all these things to make you think I'm a good person instead of just the best thing I can do is just take care of myself. But I'm gonna fuss over you. And
even complimenting, over complimenting.
Because you know what it also does? It's patronizing. It's like, you're not okay without me. You're a mess. So I'm going to take care of you.
But I usually find people who are like, you're right. You're right. I love you.
Well, give them my number.
Okay, so tell me, what does young Whitney look like when she wants to date someone?
Oh, these days.
Well, no, I'm curious when you were younger.
Oh, younger. Yes.
I mean, you have some like hilarious stories.
You are not young right now.
No. I mean, like when you're, I'm thinking like, who are you? Did you always date alcoholics, for example? Did you always date addicts?
If you grow up in that and, we're all doing what we were programmed to do, unless we actively deprogram, I could walk in a room and just vibrate on a different frequency. One person in a room. Everyone, boring. Anyone who has a secure attachment style, anyone who's just like wants to make, I can find the most recently separated, California sober, Winona Ryder tattooed, just like, it's part of the reason I was so fascinated by the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing. I was just like, this is what I grew up around, first of all, but I was just like riveted, and everyone was like, why are you watching that? I was like, duh. Like you vibrate. We call them Christmas trees. Like you can walk into a room and someone just lights up, and there's an instant. It's unfortunate sometimes we call it chemistry or butterflies or glorify this thing that might actually—
Sparks.
No!
There were sparks.
Yes. No, these could be alarm bells. This could be the good anxiety that's getting you to go like, no, go the other direction. But I'm like, daddy, and even though I'm like, no, it's toxic, it's addictive. So that's where the love addiction comes in. It's just like, I know this is bad for me. I know how the story is going to end, but I do not have any control. This is going to make my life unmanageable. I can't take a contrary action. Even when it stops being fun, I gotta, which is where the gambling addiction comes in a little bit. Like a week ago, we had this great night. So I said this and I wore this.
That is gambling.
So maybe if I say this and wear this and put this music on and order this food, I'll get that's whatever cherry on the slot machine again, or whatever it is, So I found myself in relationships where I had to constantly audition for approval, chase someone who's just emotionally unavailable for whatever litany of reasons, someone that was just shady, and I had to constantly do math. Growing up in an alcoholic home, you're always doing the Rubik's Cube of like, it's like trying to read.
I dated someone who was once like, why do you think that you know what's going on with me when I don't? And I was like, because I know what that eyelash movement means.
Yep.
You don't, but I swear I do. I think it bothered him more when I was right.
Oh,
because like even if it was like something little, and the way it was explained to me is when you are so fine-tuned to the sound of keys. You can tell by the sound of the keys if they're in a good mood or not. You can tell by the cadence of feet. You can tell by how the door opens and how quickly it closes after it opens. You can tell by how the fridge opens and what's being taken out. Like you can tell. So of course, if you put me in an intimate situation with someone, especially someone that like I want to have like me, I will be able to tell what that eyebrow movement meant before you do.
This is LA. No one's eyebrows move. But, yes. And I think to be more elegant about this, because I feel like that was ugly the way I just said that. I think to be more specific, people that made me question my own self-worth, people that made me go like, you shouldn't have said that. That was so dumb. Or, well, it's because you have eye bags. And you need to get rid of those eye bags. And it's because you're fat. And it's because you're not funny enough and not interesting enough. And that's why this happened. People that made me question my self-worth because I went, oh, they must be right. Like, I know what this is. This is like the comfortable, sort of pain instead of the unfamiliar. Like, and if people were interested in me or loved me, it was like, were present and available.
Did you
sabotage?
Like, are you a
Scientologist?
I mean, were you a person who like, if it felt good, like did you find a reason for it not to be good?
Self-sabotage, I guess I get confused about that because I think I am so radically in my like higher power. Like
I'm a cut and run person myself.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Which I think is a form of
but
sabotage.
But if it's going well, would you run?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a place we're different.
It's really
we don't have to be the same. I'd like us to be the same, but we don't have to be.
Really more, I think and maybe this is a way to get myself off the hook. So let me just check that ego thing where it's like, when I go like, well, if I'm in my third step or if I'm aligned with God, I can't look back and say I sabotaged that. I must have been doing the right thing because then this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't happen. I wouldn't be here if I had stayed in that. But I also think that, to your point about over-pathologizing, like when I've been accused of and openly admit to being like, you're commitment phobic, you have intimacy issues. It's like, well, maybe I just don't want to commit to you. Maybe I don't want to be intimate with you. I think it's okay to like trust your gut a little. I'm not going to force myself to be in a relationship with someone if my gut is saying get out of there. I think we all have such a trouble telling the difference between what's a learned maladaptive response and what's our instinct just saying this isn't right.
Like the person who once said to me, "Are you a prude?" And I said, "No, I'm just discriminating. I just don't want your tongue in my mouth.
Yep. I'm
not a prude. I know when I want someone's tongue in my mouth. I don't want your tongue in my mouth."
That
And at first I was like, am I a prude? Because like am I a prude? Did I? And I was like, no, I know what to do when I want someone's tongue in my mouth.
It took me a lot. I know my body knows how to react.
I know how to receive that.
So that just bothers me a little bit when, it's like people are like, you have intimacy issues. It's like, it's been 6 months and it's not, this isn't taking. Like, it's just not taking. Most people are not a match, right? Most people are not a match, and I think that I had the opposite of I'm going to talk myself into this, but on this, he's so nice. And so that it's just not, it's also just not a match. And that's okay too.
Let's talk more about anxiety that we're trying to get rid of and anxiety as a gift of intuition. Harville Hendricks is obviously very intelligent, and he talks about we are often attracted to the negative qualities of
our primary caretakers.
Primary caretakers. And so when we have disorganized or chaotic attachment figures, then it's interesting that, you how you describe it, where you'll find that one person who, and so in that moment, a lot of us have a confusion between, oh, this feels familiar. This is a huge rush of sensation. And we associate that with love versus, wait a second, these are early warning signals that we don't identify as early warning signals, and trying to parse that out and understand, what are we actually sensing? What does it mean to us?
Because this is actually the darkest part. After reading that book, whenever I'd have that feeling, because I think he also talks about you attract to those in order to heal the wounds. I'm like, no, I'm not attracted to someone toxic. I'm just over here healing, you guys. Like, I'm meant to be in this so that I can heal my wounds. This guy's my healer. Yes, he's married, but look, I'm over here just healing. My inner child wants what she wants. I'm not going to not. I do attachment parenting with my inner child. And so I'm not going to say no to her. I'm going to let her, give her the dignity.
She just wants to play.
Yeah, this is where you can be so over sort of therapized that you can justify something. And that's why one of our slogans is keep it simple. Just keep it simple. Stop trying to.
Do you have a different sensation now, or a different relationship with sensation, where you're like, oh, I feel this and that's actually telling me this? Because, when you were talking about the similarities between the two of you, one thing that Mayim does get accused of sometimes is being so in the head that the body sometimes doesn't follow.
I think for me, it's more, first of all, am I walking on eggshells around someone?
Yes.
If I am.
I'm sorry, this wasn't a quiz. I'm sorry. Okay.
I'm going to give birth. Oh, God.
Also, if you give birth on the podcast, it would do wonders
for our ratings. We would love for you to give birth on this podcast. Like, I gave birth literally in the next room by myself.
We can do this. Close by. We can have my placenta for lunch. And so I think for me, I just have to check myself. Am I people pleasing with somebody? Am I being overly unctuous and over complimenting somebody? because that might be a red flag. I don't need to diagnose them and be like, oh, I'm dealing with a narcissist or I'm dealing with a borderline. I just have to go like, I didn't even need to focus on their, people are like, red flags in other people. It's like, think about what you're doing in response to them. Don't think about them because you can't diagnose them when you don't know. And I also, it does bother me that people aren't doctors or don't know. It's just like, well, he's a narcissist. I'm like, how do you, like, you're 24 and you've DM'd him on Hinge twice.
Sometimes they're just men.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, he's a magician. It's like, there's so many worse things about this guy. And so
it's like when the OT said that my like, she's like, you report that your son has problems finding things in the fridge. I'm like, yes, because he's male. I don't know if that's a clinical problem.
Aren't they all colorblind? Aren't most guys colorblind?
I just can't find anything on a shelf. I don't know.
And so I think I just have to sort of take an inventory of what my motives are. Like, are my motives all of a sudden to make this person like me? Are my motives are to try to assuage this person's ego? Do I want something from this person? Like, am I regressing emotionally? Am I trying too hard to be funny? Am I trying too hard to be smart?
You literally just listed my relationship manual. Like, people please, compliment, always be sexually available. Like, this is my manual. No, that's not right.
One of the biggest laughs I ever got in a room in a meeting was I was talking about how I was in a relationship where I would wear really like painful, sexy lingerie at all times just in case he would like to.
Oh, that's not, I'm wearing that right now just because I don't know what might happen with us. I'm sorry. I mean, I already asked you to put a finger in my tushy. That's foreplay.
Just under that hoodie is just like a ball gag, like just. I can't.
Okay.
Oh God, I'm just picturing looking down and seeing the leg from the Christmas Story with the fishnet stockings. Like, what is she doing?
Okay,
she was barefooted. That's very sexual to a lot of people. I would like to know your opinion on foot fetishes, but so like always prepared, always standing by, always focused on the other person. And if I find myself leaving a conversation with someone and obsessing over how poorly the conversation went and how badly I performed, like that's just, these are red flags. Like my inner child for some reason came out and tugged and went like, it's showtime for whatever reason. And that person didn't do anything wrong, but I either need to be going to more meetings, I either need to be doing more service, I either need to be like doing more self-care, and then I have to do that and then reassess.
Tell me about your use of the inner child. This was something that I hated. Yeah. And, comes more from the therapy world, like psychotherapy and internal family systems work and all this stuff. When did you sort of like come to terms with like, what is this inner child? Is it one child? Like, do you have one image of like, this is my inner child? Like, do you like, where does that fit into your day and your life?
Sure. It was a game changer for me. It's in the big red book, the big ACA book, there's an exercise where first, when you do amends in ACA, the first person you make amends to is yourself. And then my sponsor said, everyone you think owe you an amends is who you'll end up making an amends to. And then an amends to the inner child. And there's this exercise where in your right hand, you write questions for your inner child, and then in your left hand, you respond.
Jonathan loves writing with his other hand.
As the inner child, and it was...
What is that exercise? Can you explain it to us?
So in your
Meaning like why?
Like in your right hand, your dominant hand, sorry, we'll say...
You're so handist.
I was going to say, what
I'm canceling you.
I was about to say it's ableist, but then I'd be implying that lefties are... I'm just going to stay out of this. Yeah. I know. And so... you write a question to your inner child, 5 questions. And for me, I think it was like, what do you want to eat for dinner? Because I was struggling with the eating stuff. And the big thing was just feed yourself the way you would feed a child. The cheat for ACAs is often live as if you were caring for a child.
Wow.
So you would never tell a child.
You're reparenting.
You would never tell a child you're not going to eat lunch. You would never tell a child you're not going to brush your teeth this morning. Well, I'm sure it happens. But you would never tell a child you have to hang out with someone that makes you uncomfortable. You have to talk to this person that makes you uncomfortable. You're going to have Diet Coke for dinner. You would never do that to a child, so why would you do that to yourself? So it's that little sneak. And then on my home screen of my phone was a photo of me at like 5. And so I was always kind of just trying to.
So then your left hand, which is your non-dominant hand, so your brain is going to have to do a whole dance.
So I would ask questions that, so specifically they were about, the first couple were about food. What do you want to eat for dinner? What's your favorite food? And then who do you want to hang out with this weekend? Like who's your best friends? Stuff that was like questions you would more ask a child. And then you respond in your non-dominant hand, and the writing looks like a kid's writing. And I instantly just started sobbing.
Wow.
You know, it was pretty wild. And crying was not a tool that I used very often back then. And the answer to what's your favorite food was, as an adult, I'd be like, oh, it's, you know, at the time was probably something, you know, stupid.
Right.
Cafe, whatever fake anorexic food that I was pretending is like, I'm vegan, I'm microbiotic. It's like, no, I have an eating disorder. And I'm just dumb. And so I remember writing, my dad and I used to make these like toast with peanut butter and honey, and the honey would be in a smiley face. And I wrote like peanut butter smile. And I had forgotten that we even did it. It was like this, maybe it was just the allowing of it, maybe whatever.
It was in your brain though, and you pulled it out.
Instantly, I had forgot. It was a memory that completely dislodged and just started sobbing, you know? And like, who's your best friend? I didn't say the person I think should be my best friend or the people that I was forcing myself to be friends with. It was like my best friend from when I was probably 8, 9, you know, and had totally kind of forgotten about her. So I found it incredibly powerful. And so doing that, you know, I was also on my knees. Like I was also at a place where I was like real desperate. And so that was really helpful for me. And then just to use the term inner child reaction, it's just like, oh, if it's hysterical, it's historical. Like if I'm really this upset about this, it's probably something, even if you're like, the inner child feels odd to you, it's just kind of like, it's not about this. It's about triggering. I hate that word, is so rough these days, but it's like, this is bringing up something
activating.
Old. Yeah. And so it's kind of exactly like this, you know, that's why we have HALT in our program. Like before you react to something, we want to respond and not react. It's like, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Because when a kid freaks out, you're not like, are you having a bad reaction? You're just like, do you need some water?
Yeah.
Do you need a nap?
Usually they haven't eaten or they have to poop.
Right.
Yeah.
We should do HALT. We should add that. Yeah, totally. So it's like, I'm probably having a histrionic reaction to this because I haven't taken care of myself. I haven't eaten today. I haven't slept. I've, you know, been like focusing on other whatever. And my self-care didn't come first. And
my solution was getting into bed and saying goodnight to Jonathan at 8 p.m. I texted him and I was like, I'm done with this day. And he's like, at 8? Yes.
Nice.
And I also like, that's a gift that I gave to everyone in my life, that I closed my eyes at 8 o'clock.
And so is that when you go, I'm going to take a contrary action and not send texts
and
after
I had
this
a
time.
million things I had to do. I had a million things that I needed to handle, think about, worry about. And my head had been hurting since the middle of the night. And I made it through the day and it started hurting again. And I was like, and that is recovery.
Yep.
Because my other solution would have been like, if I drink a small can of Coke, I will have energy for 3 more hours. And then I will eat the chocolate that is in the cupboard.
Well, that is what the inner child would have gotten for himself.
I mean, before Overeaters Anonymous, I would have been like, it's 10 p.m., let's make mac and cheese.
Yep.
And let's eat it until midnight. So the recovery was saying, nothing else needs to happen today. Like, for real, the cats are fed.
Yep.
I'm going to make a confession. I was too lazy to wash the sheets. So they were still in the hamper, and I was in the bed.
Okay.
And my 18-year-old came to say,
still go on in bed.
Well, but they were in the hamper because they were supposed to make it to the machine.
Okay, but
so the 18-year-old, there's only one pair of sheets. I am a boy. There's only one pair of sheets in that house. That's right. So my 18-year-old came from his dad's. You know, he came home, and I texted, "I'm in bed, but please come say goodnight." So in the practical darkness, he's like, "There are no sheets on this bed. Are you a bachelor?" I felt like saying, we've been divorced 12 years. You know I'm a bachelor.
But you're Jewish. Don't you have sex through them? I had to cut holes in the other ones. Is that why you only have one? You only have one pair of uncircumcised sheets?
Ableist.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. In any event, what I was also able to do was not lie to my child and be like, there are sheets, it's dark, you can't. I said, you know what? It didn't get done today, but yours and your brother's did, so you can go put yours on your bed. And I went to sleep and I stayed in that bed. I woke up a lot, didn't have great dreams, but the headache is mostly gone.
Awesome.
And that's what needed to happen because for most of my life, you get by on 1 cup of coffee and a cigarette. Right. You get by on 4 hours of sleep. You just keep going.
And everyone's going to pay the price around you.
Correct.
And that's what you get for loving me.
I identify a lot with your mom, especially before I had, I think, the right kind of recovery. I was always, when I was especially newly divorced. Stressed out, overworked, not receiving the care that I needed,
Of course.
And really just white knuckling it. I just white knuckled it. And also I owe a living amends to my children for the rest of their lives because they experienced a mother who was white knuckling it. And so I get to constantly do the best that I can. And I do. I have, different and better resources now.
I also think adversity is good for kids. They need a little smattering of it. And,
yes, I need to believe that.
You've mentioned this in another podcast of like, it's not about making, quote, mistakes. Is there such a thing? But that's a different conversation for someone smarter than me. But that it's really not about whether you make them. It's how you repair and you say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake.
Oh, yeah, no, I tell them.
Then they learn they can make mistakes.
One of the greatest gifts of being part of a 12-step program is learning how to legit apologize as quickly as you notice that you need to. Because I used to hold on to, and I used to sit and I would wallow in it and I would write the draft of the note and the thing. How about, oh my God, I wronged you. I have to do it as quickly as possible or I'm going to get the ulcer, not you.
Yep.
So I'd like to pivot a little bit to, I looked like this before I got pregnant, but you are pregnant and you are at a place in life now where you get to experience something, from a completely different place of recovery and health. Like, I'm not saying we're ever cured. But what?
I think I am.
Okay, fine. You're perfect. What was that like? Was there a lot of perseveration? I know that you did set aside your girls.
I did.
Set aside the eggs.
Got some eggs and Hermosa.
Curious, did you really know, now's the time? What did that feel like?
It's actually fascinating because a friend of mine, because I got pregnant, kind of was like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't, at 40. And,
You had to be then having sex with someone. You didn't mean you're walking around with an egg. Sorry.
I had talked very publicly in a couple stand-up specials about freezing my eggs, so everyone thinks I had sex with a Tesla or something. I don't know. It's I was with a human, so it was with a human.
You were open to that possibility.
Yes, I went off birth control, and I was like, if it happens, it happens. It doesn't, it doesn't. I wanted it to, but I think I see so many women, when you try so hard, you would know the science of this. Seems like it kind of shuts your body down or something, And so I was just not attached to it, was definitely smoking weed before bed.
Right.
After sex, I just lied there for longer than I normally would. Instead of getting up and I don't want to get a UTI, I was kind of, my mom had just died. Grief does wild things to our brains. And I said to a girlfriend of mine, I was like, isn't it crazy that I'm pregnant? This is so crazy. And she was like, are you out of your mind? She was like, you told me 5 years ago. You were because it was at a time when I was doing the steps over again. And I learned about the tool of scheduling when to worry about something instead of just going, I need to worry about da-da-da. You go you know what? December 1st, I'm going to start worrying about this thing. And I will make a decision by December 15th.
Right. Or my favorite is you can worry about that for 20 minutes today, and then you do not worry about it again today.
Totally.
Right.
Or going a friend of mine's in this bad relationship and I'm worried. Just be you know what? Let's worry about it in a month for 2 days and then, whatever. I was, I guess, in that moment, and I was obviously perseverating about having kids at 35, finding myself sort of lowering my bar for people and being I don't think this is the perfect match, but I'm 35, so I'm going to have to, this will have to do. He's got a chain wallet, but whatever. And so that, thanks. So I guess I had said to her, she's my a gala, I do equine therapy stuff, trainer. And she was like, you told me, you were I'm going to have a kid at 40, regardless. I don't know if it's going to be adoption. I don't know if it's going to be surrogate. I don't know if it's going to be eggs. Like, I'm going to get pregnant at 40 and I'm not going to think about it until then. And I kind of forgot that I had sort of put that out in the universe. But so I guess that was also like subconsciously kind of at play too. I think I thought by then, like, I'll be fixed by then. You know, I was really scared about, you know, recreate or what's the word when you keep something going?
Perpetuating.
Perpetuating like ancestral curses and cycles, you know, and I was like, that's probably when I'll be mature enough to be a mom and solvent enough and have done the things in my career, so I'll never resent the kid because I felt very resented.
Oh, you'll resent them.
I felt very resented by my mom that I was, because she had this amazing career and she was great at her job, and I always felt like you know, I had to go to Bloomingdale's with her and like sit in her office, and you know, she always had to drag me to stuff, you know, so I was sort of like,
which also wasn't cool then. Like, children were supposed to be like had and left at home.
I would like shoplift. Yeah, it was like a nightmare.
Right.
You know? And so so I had always thought I'm gonna have a kid at 40, regardless if I have a partner, regardless what the circumstances are, you know.
So you didn't use the frozen eggs?
I haven't used the frozen eggs yet.
Wow.
I know.
Au naturel.
Maybe for the next one, au natch.
Wow.
I had been on birth control for years, and now's not like the hot time to be negative to birth control, but it just ultimately I didn't realize how much it made me a zombie and how much it was sort of affecting.
Well, it's convincing your body that you're pregnant when you're not, which is not really a fun place to be.
And when you're pregnant, you're more hypervigilant. You're more, you know, you have to be, as you should be. So I sort of went off of it when I couldn't cry after my mom died. I'm watching her die in hospice and I'm not crying. And I'm like, I guess I'm just a psychopath. Went off birth control, cried for months, had so much more energy, like just for me, served its purpose when I needed it. I used to get really bad migraines. Thought it was, they said go on birth control. And turns out it wasn't the presence of hormones. It's I had to cut out some people. That were, you know what I mean? It's sort of like the people giving me the adrenaline and cortisol. Like I had to get rid of some relationships, like instead of add drugs.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, so yeah, it just kind of happened naturally. Here I am and got a kid and psyched and scared.
Unpacking a few things. Markers are ancestral curses. Also, scheduling worry is phenomenal. I think people underestimate how powerful that is. They're like, oh, just like it puts it out of your head. So I think people should consider doing that if they haven't done it. But you mentioned earlier in the episode, you were all godded up. And then you put this into the universe, this notion of having a kid at 40. Like, what do you think happened? Do you think that you just set the intention and sort of created a life plan? Do you think it's coincidence? Like, how do you explain this?
That's a great, I'm sure there's someone way smarter than me, or, you know, I do go in and out of the Abraham Hicks cult when I'm desperate of the.
Do I know the Abraham Hicks cult?
Ooh, Abraham Hicks is like it's kind of like The Secret, if I'm going to be. It's McDonald's therapy. It's Abraham Hicks is like a speaker that talks about manifesting your own reality.
Oh, okay.
And you have to feel the feelings of the thing that you want.
Okay.
And maybe the neuroscience perspective is like you're training your brain to have a certain tolerance for something, and then you gravitate it.
But that's is it manifesting? Is that
it is manifesting? Like there is science in sport where you're practicing an outcome by pre-visualizing it, and then that is creating the circuitry for the thing to actually happen, and so that gets expanded into you're creating the energetic field in the world that allows the thing to come to you. So Abraham takes it a little further.
And sometimes you're like, there's like a multiple personality. There's like I don't know. Sometimes I get very confused and it feels very corny. But every now and then there's just like that one thing that's said in the way that my brain can't fight with or roll my eyes at. And so I think I kind of felt the feelings of, I'm going to have a kid. I don't need to worry about not having a kid, because then I'm just going to manifest not having a kid. And then I'm going to project the stress onto what man wants to date the girl that needs to have a kid down, you know? So I kind of was like, I got this, and I'm going to have a kid at 40. And so I don't know what that means for the universe and manifesting, but it was just already decided. And I guess I just lived my life accordingly. I definitely started working harder in this area and started saving money in this area. And it was always like, oh, because I'm going to have a kid at 40. You know, so I just have to have all this ducks in a row. You know, so I guess I maybe it's just a coincidence also. Could also just be a coincidence. But I never worried that it wouldn't happen, even though I wasn't really I held a baby for the second time yesterday. I was a friend of mine
Maybe I should practice
had
this.
a 6 months old, and he's like, "Do you want to hold him?" And I was like, "I probably should." That'd probably be a good idea. Like, I don't know. Meth heads do it in the woods. Teenagers do it. Like, I had a plastic baby as a kid. I put it in a microwave like a couple times. Like, I feel like I'll know what to. I mean, something will kick in, you know. So I think that I don't necessarily have the correct answer to your question, but those are my guesses.
That is the correct answer. Just avoid the microwave, you'll be fine.
Yeah. So it's maybe that.
What scares you?
Ooh, really good question.
Or what scares you that you want to talk about? Because some things scare us that we don't need to talk about on a podcast.
What scares me? Eye contact for long periods of time.
No, I meant about this process.
Oh. It's just like in general.
No.
It's like, this is a good date.
No,
Good date
you know,
question.
what I don't want to say what scares you, you know what? I mean, look, when I do a fear inventory, it's almost all about my kids, you know, and like things I'm going to do that are going to make their life miserable, irreparable, like I'll fail, you know.
Sure.
So I'm curious, like, do you have, and also, you know, you have a lot of recovery under your belt, which I think is a beautiful place, you know, to come from. You know, a lot of people don't get into the rooms until, you know, their kids are in their teens or 20s. And, you know, but I'm curious, especially considering kind of what you came from, what kind of makes you nervous?
And I'll also be remiss to not say this, even though because I did have blue hair for a while. So people already think I'm like on drugs. But I did do over the pandemic a oxytocin ketamine nasal spray treatment. With a doctor treatment at a nightclub. Yeah, it was me and Dr. Dre.
A clinical assisted.
Yes.
Got it.
Ketamine, it lasts for a couple hours. It wasn't the drip. I haven't done the drip. But there was a couple things that I couldn't quite crystallize in program. I couldn't quite forgive this person. I couldn't quite.
And that's trauma work, which lives outside of 12-step programs, as it were.
Yeah, I couldn't quite melt this resentment. I couldn't quite think I was good enough to be a mom. I couldn't quite, you know, and I do think, you know, look, I had a lot of program before that. There was a therapist assisting me in it. That definitely helped me with just a couple irrational fears. It really.
They put it in your nose?
You just, up the nose.
And then they sit with you, you talk about it?
And you talk about it. But I got to the point to where I was like, I'm like, the person that sexually abused me as a child, he was sexually abused and hurt people. I was like, I think I might be going too far in the forgiveness. But I need to send him love.
That's an empathogen. And the notion is not like that ketamine is used clinically to like make you forgive your abuser. The notion is that, you know, those kinds of drugs, those kind of experiences are giving you a 30,000-foot view on your experience as part of a larger, like you're literally part of the cosmos. Like it's, you know,
totally. And
that's very interesting.
And I had, which I didn't totally realize when my sponsor told me the first time I did my 4th step, she said, there's no women in your 4th step. And I definitely realized I had some stuff with girl friendships. I think after coming from my mom being very, like I just had trouble with women and girl friendships. Women scared me a little bit. I thought I had to take care of them. I worried about it. Just was so that also helped me with a lot of female friendships, just taking the charge out of it. And so I felt so much stronger going forward having a kid, you know, because I now was able to nurture all these incredible friendships with women.
You know, it's not often that people mention sexual abuse in passing the way you did. But was that something that was, you know, did that factor into sort of a lot of your journey as a child, teenager? Like, where did that fit with all the other stuff?
I mean, I think that from what I understand, a lot of the restrictive eating stuff connects to, from what I understand, sexual abuse and or overeating. Sometimes it's to make yourself less sexual and make yourself, you know, not have like subconsciously or being really heavy as a way to protect yourself subconsciously from that. I don't think I think it probably made me, in relationships, I was very scared of men for a long time and just kind of wasn't sexually active in a way that was, you know, very consistent or present. I wasn't present in sexual activity for, you know, quite a while, is probably where it showed up. I think it probably made me really good at being alone, and what I do for a living is a very independent, solo, lone wolf job. You have lots of friends that are comics,
Also surrounded by men who you get to have a businessy relationship with.
Totally. And I developed this armor of like how to get someone to not find me attractive, to repel men. I developed a very repellent personality in a lot of ways, or sort of masculinized myself. And, so I'm sure there's all kinds of, what's the word? Like ramifications, from that I haven't spent like a ton of time. I think from what I understand, it's way more common than, so I never want to be the person that's like, I'm the only child that's ever been cute or something. Like, I'm just like, I feel like it's, and a lot of it was really nebulous. One was with a stepmother in the shower, and you're kind of like, oh, I thought that was just how showers worked. Jeanette McCurdy's talked about this, so I think a lot of it, and then you've got like a coach for a team, and you're like, it's stuff like that where you're sort of like, was it not? Is it helpful to really unpack that? Do I, so I think I've maybe unpacked it as much as is helpful.
Okay, so let's get back. I appreciate that. So let's get back to sort of what I don't want to say what scares you. What are some of the challenges you anticipate with being a parent, given all the things you know about yourself?
Totally.
Because I often say if I had more recovery, I might have been like, do I want to do this?
Yeah. I think my thing is the biggest thing, honestly, because I don't want to be act like the first person that's ever been a mom. That drives me nuts when women act like that. My biggest thing, this might be is like fentanyl. Is like, I think about like what I know it's like, what is it? Genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. Like, there's addiction in my family.
What'd you just say? Genetics loads the gun,
environment pulls the trigger for addiction. It's kind of like, so it's like, if your kid is loaded with addiction and that's what we come from, because that served our ancestors really well. That's the thing about addicts. It's like, we're kind of the over-evolved, you know what I mean? Keep eating this berry because we don't know when there's going to be more of these berries. Like, keep having sex with this because we need to have more population. It's so sometimes addicts are like the best people in a lot of ways, and probably served a very important purpose in the tribe. And but so for me, it's like I just look at my friends that have teenagers, and I have a cousin in college, and her kids. As a kid, you should, I've never done cocaine, but you should probably be able to try it a couple times, I don't know, and not die. I think for me, that's where I get
So your campaign
scared.
is really, can we please remove the fentanyl from cocaine so that people can just have a couple experiences so they know they don't like it?
As a parent, I feel like I'm going to need to do some blow.
Sorry, I just like that's, you're like, I just need to do some cocaine without thinking there might be fentanyl in it. Is this such a hard thing to ask of the universe? I think this is a campaign you need to take on. We could start a GoFundMe.
Go FUN. Go fund me with it. I feel that's what I worry about. I feel like there's so many tools now. I mean, there's podcasts like this. The kids are resilient. I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to apologize. But I can't control what happens outside the house. I also feel like I struggle a little bit. I was sort of Southern parented. There was nothing a pinch couldn't solve. I was if you're having a tantrum in the grocery
I'll give you something
store.
To cry about.
But it was also just like, it was just like, we're going to the car. Because
I'm sorry, you're pinching your neck?
No, my mom would just pinch my ear, like we're going to the car, because I would, if I didn't.
No, I get it.
I didn't want to go home, so I would just sit on the ground in the grocery store. But a pinch, it works. You've talked about this of like, it works in the moment, but long term it's going to cause, I just don't want to ever take that quick fix. And I'm scared I will. And, maybe being scared you will is the reason you won't. And I don't want, it's like, this is probably sexist, but I'm having a boy. And I was kind of like, oh, thank God. Like, I'm not going to model any.
He may decide to be a girl, Whitney.
Look, honestly, what's your gender? I have to ask him in utero. Is that how it works now?
No, you just have to wait your whole life. You'll be like, I'll use no pronouns for my child.
No,
they might change it.
When you grow up poor, you're whatever gender your older sibling is, dude. When you can afford to buy your own clothes, you can be whatever you want.
What was the relief? I felt this relief when I was like, God thought she can handle, maybe we'll give her 2 children.
Yeah.
But she can't deal with a girl.
Dude,
I got 2 boys.
The people I know, the women I know that have daughters, they are just in dogfights every day. I mean, it is just their daughters are biting them. They are in. Look, it's like it. they are designed to need to test and beguile
Very
and
social creatures.
yes, and just constantly challenge you. So I just was
A
like,
lot of hormones also.
Yup. Isn't it
Yeah.
true that girls are born with every egg they'll ever have?
Yeah.
We don't talk about this enough.
Yeah, you grow your egg like you grow your eggs when you're in your mama's belly. Like that's when you
I don't like.
Well, that's when
this.
that's when the gametes are. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, So I'm glad I'm having a boy at least first.
Yeah.
And because I was like, what if my weird eating? What if I have weird eating stuff that I don't even know about?
Boys have it too, but yes.
100%. It's now.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. You were feeling relieved. I want you not to feel relieved.
So my kid's gonna be like keto. Oh God! He's gonna be doing like the carnivore diet because I love men have eating disorders now, but it's just like
no. But
CrossFit.
I think what you said about that sort of like notion of intimidation, and there's for some of us, women don't feel safe. That intensity sometimes, even if we're intense, because people a lot of times say that to me, like, well, you're so intense. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean I want to engage with an equal intensity human.
Yeah.
But I think that notion, like for me, was also like, what would I do if I have this female person?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't like them in junior high.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah. What if I have a mean girl?
Right. But I have two very talky boys. So it's kind of like, it's also intense.
There was a book that really helped me hunt, gather, parent. That is kind of, you just let them go, because I see all friends of mine, we go to the playground or whatever, going to playground without a kid. People don't like it. But I'm like, no, this is my friend. I'm with Oliver and his mom, and everyone's named Oliver now. And I see these parents who are like, don't be careful on the slide and be careful on the slide. And you see the kid look back and be like, why did you bring me here? If it
Bitch,
was
why
so
did you bring me here? That's what they want to say.
Why are we here if it's such a death trap? Whereas you're supposed to let them go. And when they're actually about to be in danger, that's when you come and intervene and you kind of just let them go.
Yeah. Well, some people even take it to the next level of like, if there is not mortal danger, if there is not critical danger, they will figure it out. So the kind of parenting you're talking about, we used to call it RIE, which is resources for
the wooden spoons.
Yeah, like no, well,
that's Waldorf.
Sometimes Waldorf. Yeah, I'm a Waldorf. Well, but Waldorf and RIE often go together, and it's funny because a lot of people assume that if you're an attachment parent or if you're like a home birth person or whatever, that your entire identity is talking about your children. Like constantly hovering over them.
No.
And the fact is, for many of us, the notion of like letting them learn to have their own experience, which is something that many of us didn't experience. And I think especially, and I don't know if people listening, might relate to this. Sometimes when parents have deficiencies in one area, they'll try and overcompensate, right? And so sometimes you get too much attention or you get too much, hovering, and that's then confusing for a child because what you get is this sort of like fractury, especially if there's borderline stuff. It's like, oh, we're good now. Oh, but we might not be good. And so I think for then when we become and Parenting Without a Map is another book that many of us read, which is really good. Also, I think, what is it? Birthing from the Inside Out is a workbook that also like does a lot of inner child stuff. But the notion being that like, when we become parents, we don't want to repeat those patterns, right? We don't want to overdo it because I think that's what, Jonathan and I think can speak to this. A lot of people in communities that are so focused on being present is because like they weren't, so I'm gonna be.
Yep.
But you can also smother mothering is what I specialize in.
Which is, I don't know if this is a remix of Montessori, which I love. The Montessori model, I've been studying it a lot. I'm sure there's something to take from all of these, let's be honest, and do it works for you.
Montessori is like, what if we have chairs and tables the size of children? And people were like, oh my God, we thought we'd just put them at big tables and tell them like, you're just not big enough, and that they would feel good about themselves. That's Montessori. So yes, Montessori really figured something out.
And like, for example, like kids want to help. They just want to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
But because we're busy or it's annoying that a kid is trying to help wash the dishes, we go, oh, you go play. I'm going to wash the dishes. So you're teaching the kid while mom works. It's your job to go play.
That my work is separate from your existence.
Totally. So you give them a job that's not so fake that they know that it's fake and something that's safe and whatever.
Yeah.
And just teach them, with that so that they can build their self-esteem.
Also, which is how for most of human history, children had to help.
Correct.
And my children are like,
that's why people had them.
Correct.
They worked in factories.
And my rule is I don't pay you allowance to be part of this family.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I wanted to ask you about the Finland reading model in a second, but also kids. It's not your job to entertain your kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your job to like.
Correct.
Don't take them to the ice capades if you don't want to go to that. Like you know what I mean? Like they feel it. They know.
Yep.
You know. So it's like letting them be alone.
Also,
and
you're
play.
not their playmate.
Correct. And
I mean, you have to play with them, and it's good to play with them. But also, they sometimes are going to be bored.
This is also a hot take in tolerating boredom. And my sponsor always says that I conflate boredom and serenity. That's the addiction thing. They have to be busy at all times. Alcoholics are the only people that think they should be having fun all the time.
Right.
Tolerate the ability to be bored. You know, like you're bored. Do so. My aunt would always say this. She'd be like, "All right, go do something interesting. Go do a chore. There's a lot to do here. If you're bored, you're bored.
Cry in the backyard by yourself." Yeah, that's what I would do when I was bored.
Totally. And so, I forgot what I was gonna say about that. But I was curious what you thought about the Finland reading model. That kids over there, they don't learn to read until they're like 6 because
that's
so Waldorf.
Waldorf is also Waldorf believes that we grow in 7-year increments, and the first 7 years should be simply play, body play, movement, fairy tales. We're big on fairy tales. Ooh. But some of us until the first teeth fall out is what the Steiner philosophies. And I know people are gonna be like, Steiner was a Nazi, because like people have a thing about everything. But in our experience, that we did the first 7 years like that. And literally the first week that my older son lost his first tooth, he asked me to read him a sign. It's not that he didn't know what letters were.
That was kind of their thing.
But I did find that that worked for us. My children eventually did learn to read, but they also learned to walk. They didn't walk when people wanted them to, and they would learn to walk. They learned to eat. They stopped breastfeeding, all the things.
Neuroscience basis of it, because if they develop their focus first, they then can learn to read faster.
Look, yes, and you'll find people who are like, my 18-month-old can recite the alphabet, and they'll do it. And
sounds like a loser.
I'm often like, that's not a skill that I felt the need to emphasize, for my kids. So yeah, we were a non-academics family. But again, everybody's going to do it their own way.
There's but yes. I think it was like in the Atlantic, sorry to be that Portlandia sketch, so the article. But because women now have been in the workforce, have been CEOs and bosses and account managers and then are having kids now, that they run their kid like a business.
100%.
And
we bring the corporate rules into all of our interactions, which is why I could barely go to the park, because it was the parent dynamics between each other that I could not tolerate. And God bless my ex-husband. He could go to the park and have a great time with them. I also have a problem
with the women at the park.
Exactly. No, I also have a problem filtering any sound that is not
I have misophonia bad.
Yeah. So like I will hear every conversation. Yep. If I hear one more person say, "Don't run with your juice box," why? What's going to happen? They're going to drop their juice box and then they'll stop running with their juice box. Anyway, that was me at the park.
It's so hard to watch people be bad parents.
No,
as a future bad parent, I mean, this means a lot coming from me. I was in the grocery store and I couldn't control myself. This happened like a year ago, and there was this woman, and I know I don't know if she was a single mom. I don't know the situation.
She could have just gotten a cancer diagnosis. You don't know.
Sure. She was probably like, the kid was probably like 4, and she's pushing the cart, and the kid kept grabbing, because the General Mills and these companies, they put the sugary cereal on the bottom row on purpose so that the kids see it and grab it and guilt the parents and try to get their diabetes fixed. And so this kid grabs the Trix or whatever it is, weird name for a child cereal, realizing, grabs it, puts it in the cart, and then the mom takes it out, puts it back. Kid grabs it, puts it in the cart, mom puts it back. Kid grabs it, and the mom goes, "Put it in the cart one more time. See what happens."
Oh, no.
See what happens. Put it in the cart. No, do it. Oh. Do it. See what happens. And I see this kid like, she's saying to do it, but I think this is not what I should do. And it was like I had Tourette's. I'm embarrassed that I did it, but I was like,
oh no.
I was like, it's just,
no, you said something.
That's the first time I've ever done something like this.
You could get shot in the supermarket by that lady.
And the they, them, whatever it was.
Or you're going to take that kid home and that's your new kid.
I know.
You wanted to, you got to. She would have
been like, you can have it. And I was like, I just saw this kid and I obviously was projecting my own stuff, and I saw myself in it, because I saw this kid be so scared and confused of like, mom's going to have an explosion. And this mom probably has a lot of explosions. And I saw myself and I was like, ma'am, I don't think your child understands sarcasm. I said, ma'am, though. I called her old. First thing I did was call her old, ma'am. Ma'am.
So what'd she say?
I was like, I don't think your child understands sarcasm. As a sarcastic asshole myself, and maybe I thought, oh my God, what if I become that? We just, and she looked at me and she was so stunned. And then I was so stunned. And then I just was like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. Dude, I literally just like turned. I was like, I left my cart. I had so much shit in it. It was like, when you have a good cart, you're like, it's a good cart. I just like left the store. I was like, I am so sorry. I'm embarrassed. And I just like got out of there. But
I mean, this inspires me. New show idea. We go on the road. We find bad parents in the wild and we intervene.
Well, I mean,
you just have to bite your tongue a lot, I bet.
You have to hold your tongue a lot. And here's the thing. I have a very hard time watching people hit their children in public. And it's like...
That's tricky.
It's very hard. And the first time that I witnessed it in person, I was at Legoland, which is also a very happy place. It's the place that you take your child to give them a good time. And I will go ahead and say, I don't know what was going on. And I'll also go ahead and say, I am certain that there is never a reason to spank a 2-year-old or to spank a 4-year-old.
It also doesn't work.
There's no good reason to spank a child. Well, I mean, it depends on what you define as work. But what I'm saying is, much as I don't know what that father was going through, there is not a world in which that is ever okay.
It's worse if it's a father.
It's look, I didn't even. It's all of it's worse. And I remembered feeling like, also as a public person, like it's me putting myself out there in a different way. But like, you cannot hit your dog.
That's correct. I was about to say
you cannot hit your dog and you cannot hit your wife the way he was hitting that child. And that's really, really hard for me. And I will say, I also feel like I did isolate a lot as a parent because of my inability to tolerate other people's bad behavior.
If your kid is watching you be stressed out, that's not going to be fun anyway, right?
Yeah, and also I'm by no means perfect, and there have been times where I have angrily grabbed my child, by the shoulder. I'm not going to say that I haven't, and I feel horrible about it.
I also am a big fan of your child should respect you and fear you a tiny bit, but not that you're gonna hurt them physically.
Correct.
Because then you're teaching them how they deserve to be treated by other people moving forward.
Yeah.
This is the stuff we do, like equine therapy, and teaching kids like, you're not allowed to touch me, you're not allowed to come into my space. And
right.
If I say, and so you're also just teaching them that this is okay for other people to treat them this way. If my mom treats me this way, why can't And so, but I also see a big lack of respect between parents or kids and their parents now.
Yeah.
I have friends whose kids call them by their first name. I'm like, what are you?
My kids call me sir. Is
sir.
What they call me.
To sir and ma'am.
I
still say sir and ma'am.
I'm very old school.
I get in trouble for it all the time.
Very old
Which is why I started just saying sir to everybody. But because it's like white women specifically can't handle being called ma'am. They just like melt down in front of you. It's like if you say it at Trader Joe's once, like you can never go back to that location. But like I see people wanting to be friends with their kids.
Yeah.
And it's just like your kid's just not your friend.
Nope.
And if it's the difference between I'm going to grab this kid by the shoulder, say they know that they can't get in a car. If you get in a car and drive. My dad did one parenting thing.
No, I grabbed the shoulder for a different reason.
Yeah, right.
Which was not okay.
Something that was like fascinating to me, and I would be curious your point of view on this. When I was like 14 or something, he said, if you get in a car with someone who's been drinking or smoking weed, you'll never leave the house again until you graduate. But if you call me and tell me the truth, I'll come get you. And there's zero ramifications. Zero. Even if you've been smoking, even if you've been drinking.
Yep.
And one time I called him. I said, Dad, I've been smoking weed. This person's been drinking. They're getting in a car.
Wow.
I'm at this 7-Eleven. He came and got me.
Amazing.
Zero punishment. And I think one of the things that I think they say it's hunt, gather, parent is when your kid tells you something, I just broke the vase you told me not to touch. Instead of freaking out, you go, thank you for telling me. So that they always know they don't have to
freak out.
So that and then we'll freak out in a second. That was mom's ashes. But so they'll never be afraid to tell you the truth, and they won't keep secrets from you.
The hiding is the worst part.
Yes. But if you teach them, of course, if you freak out at them when they tell you the truth or do something, of course they're gonna.
Because then they learn that they're alone, and whatever they've done, they've learned that whatever they've done is irreparable. And so they've broken the connection, and then there's no real way back from that because you have no access.
Jonathan and I each have a 15-year-old. And my older one is 18. So it's like a whole other universe. But that's kind of one of the things that they say is like keeping the ability to have conversations open so that you are the person, that they, in theory, can come to in that kind of situation. I really like that story that you just
My
told
dad
us.
was the one who went, if you're going to smoke weed, just do it in my house. He's like, I know you're going to do it.
It's not as much fun when they're there.
Well, because then it takes the charge off of it, It's like, but it was, I know you're going to do it.
Right.
He would, maybe this was bad parenting, but he would like buy us beer. He's like, I know, I don't want you to go ask some weirdo guy or get a fake ID or go steal it. Like, I know you're going to do this.
Right.
So like,
did you ever feel like you might be an addict of something? I'm sorry. I'm not trying to say that you are. I'm saying, did that ever occur to you in life or did you not get that disease?
I fully identify as an addict. Fully identify as an addict. We're just addicted to different chemicals.
Right.
Addiction.
No, but you never
adrenaline, perfection.
No,
control,
but I'm saying you
talking.
never were like, oh, I like drinking is also my drug. You were able to drink.
Mine when you got the eating disorder thing, that kind of in a weird way, you're like, well, wine has calories, but your addiction ends up being control. So I'm going to control and caretake the addict.
Got it.
And doing drugs makes me not feel in control, and I'm not going to be as perfect as everything. Yeah. But when my mom passed this past January, I did start smoking weed. This was my first time being addicted to a substance that was external. And I also, in LA, everyone just like is on mushrooms like all day.
Apparently they are all microdosing, not me.
They think if it's a plant, it like wants the best for you. And so everyone's like doing mushroom chocolates all day. I'm like, I just lost my mom. This is a good time to just eat mushrooms out of a candy bar that looks like a Wonka bar. The graphics alone on these mushroom bars are such a red flag. It's like, why is there a spaceship on it? This can't be good. And so I was not keeping track of the smoking weed. It was like, I'm taking it to go to sleep. And then it was like, well, it's 8:00. I should just smoke it now so that I'm, it's 4:00, but I'm not getting in a car. I'm not going. And I found myself with the one too many, a million not enough. It was working. All the stuff I had heard in the open AA rooms or the double winners meetings of like, it made me feel normal. I was like, I can just pick up the phone when someone calls. Like, I don't have to be like, should I pick up now? I was like, this is magical. And then I started doing the microdosing mushrooms. And then Dr. Drew actually pointed this out to me. I had a manic episode.
That's a hoot.
It was a real blast. So I was doing the weed. Also, California weed is wild. Like, it's bonkers, But it's like, if you get a joint, you're like, I have to finish what's on my plate. Yep. That's what I was taught. So it's like, I didn't know when to stop because it's the disease that tells you don't have a disease, but it's the disease that says like I would take an edible, and when I take an edible, my brain goes, well, that was a dud. Like I'm so impatient. It takes 40 minutes to kick in. So I'd be like, oh, I just take another one because it cooked weird. Like, I would just like make up and so I was doing the microdosing mushrooms and smoking weed, and I knew something was up when I scheduled a call with a maritime lawyer to look for the Scientology ships.
Nope.
Because there's kids on the boat.
You should stop using when.
Here's what I'll say though. He explained what a manic episode was. Because I was like, my mom had died, my parents had died, they had been in hospitals for 10 years. All my bandwidth was caretaking them. So all of a sudden I had all this energy and time. And there's, the mushrooms, I'm sure they're different.
There's also like a weird relief, like a sad relief, but it's also a relief.
A huge relief.
When the qualifier, Yeah,
well, they don't have to suffer anymore. I don't have to worry anymore. Yep. This nightmare is kind of over.
Yep.
So I was like, all the things that I've always wanted to do, or I have all this energy to actually use my whatever platform or whatever to help other people. And I'm going like, we got to go after Purdue because they poisoned the water in Appalachia. And I come
Wait, how did we get there?
And then the Saudis. I was with Nikki Glazer the other day. She was like, yeah, I knew in January, I knew something was off. You kept talking about the Saudis.
Okay, so was this like one night?
No, this was like a couple weeks. And I was just I'm already a pretty compassionate, empathic person who wants to solve big problems. And I was like, oh, there's kids on the Scientology boats. So let me just talk to this lawyer. We'll find out where they are because, there's no law and merit. Let me just talk to this guy. It felt like a very obvious thing to do at the time. And then I'm explaining it to people and I'm like, oh, do you want to jump on this FaceTime with me? And people will be like, oh, I'm good. And I'd be like, well, how can you not care about, like, how can you not want to solve this problem? And Dr. Drew explained a manic episode is when you think people aren't listening to you.
Correct.
And
well, your brain is working faster than their ears are.
And I'm like, we have to clean up the water in Flint. This hasn't been solved yet.
You found a thing to fix.
Let's just do that. But the grandiosity and the whatever narcissism or delusion that I can actually. And so
how long was this episode?
It was probably like 2-3 weeks.
Oh, so
I would say.
Okay. And you were still also pot can trigger mania, especially if we're using it to control
paranoia,
depression. So you'll get some of that grandiosity and it's elevating.
And it's this tricky thing where you're like, well, everything I was saying is true.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I'm like the alien behind you.
No, but it's about the urgency, the frequency, the intensity. And so then do we not do those things anymore?
There was like some grief too. I probably just needed to have a good cry. Yeah. Probably had to have a good cry. So that's a part of my regimen these days. But yeah, but to answer your question about like, I can get addicted to substances if the circumstances are just right.
Do we stop with the candy bars?
Oh, we're done. We're done with all that.
That was an experiment?
Yeah.
We have the data?
It's a wrap. It's definitely a wrap on that. And well, it's interesting because, I mean, look, I'm obviously pregnant, not doing anything at the moment except like folic acid. Let's go. But there are a couple like, I don't know, down the line, like I've tried ayahuasca, didn't do much for me. I'm sure there's I'm not trying to make fun of all these plant medicines that everyone loves so much these days. It just wasn't a match for me. I had also just gone off birth control cold turkey. Oh. I went off Prozac cold turkey. So I was just neurochemically like.
Did you go to Peru?
Didn't go to Peru. Went to Van Nuys. Went to the Comedy Store. For the ayahuasca.
It was like one night?
That was in upstate New York. It was 2 nights.
I don't mean to cross talk, but Jada Pinkett Smith in her book, she did a 4-night ayahuasca journey.
Then why doesn't she take Smith off her name if they haven't been married for 7 years? I don't know that guy.
I didn't ask her if that came up in her ayahuasca dream, but you did one. I
did 2 nights.
2 nights.
The first night, I think
Did you know the people?
Sorry. Oh no, Braxton Hicks. Okay,
just strangers?
No, it was just me and the person I was with at the time.
I like that. I like a one-on-one ayahuasca.
Yeah, if I'm going to be puking and shitting in a bucket, it's going to be someone that
you don't want an audience for that.
I'm good. I'm good. So, although I think Chelsea Handler did a episode where she went.
That's right. Okay, so you did two
ayahuasca 2 nights. The first night, I got to be honest, like maybe I was just being a comic about it. I was like, this is power of suggestion. Like this isn't real. Also, like sitting on a pillow for 8 hours with or without this drug, I'm going to have some epiphanies. Like being without your phone for 8 hours, you're already going to, so I was kind of like, and then he's
But did you feel sick? I
puked
purge?
A couple times. I puked because I didn't follow the diet. I didn't do the
because that's like a thing, people. The diet that they tell you.
I would literally rather be in pain forever than not drink coffee for 2 days.
Okay, fine.
This is, we all
have our limits.
But then you're kind of going like, okay.
To what lengths will you go for your recovery?
If you want to know about your addiction, try to stop doing it.
That's right.
So the plant already started speaking to me.
What happened on night 2?
Night 2, I cried a lot.
Okay.
And came up with some good ideas for jokes.
This sounds like a very labor-intensive way to cry and come up with some good ideas for jokes.
And like I wasn't like the person I was with was like in the like and I was just like I'm not. But
some people genetically do not react. Matt Gutman, who we had on this podcast, he was like. He's like, I felt all the sickness and none of the progress.
And purging, there's something to be said there. Maybe it was purging trauma, sure. But I did have like an hour where I didn't hallucinate. I didn't see gremlins. I didn't see anything. I like to say it as, I didn't hallucinate, but I did stop hallucinating. So I think my thing is I tend to hallucinate in life. This person doesn't like me. This person is mad at me.
Mentally.
I'm never going to work again. Da, 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 da. And I did have a couple moments of clarity that was like, this person isn't thinking about me at all. You know what I mean? It's like we're obsessed with what other people think about us till we realize they're just not thinking about us. It was like, that person's not mad at me. That person's 50. And if they are, bye, And like, so I did get some clarity on stuff like that. And then I had sort of a weird thing happen that I don't want to be so dismissive that I'm not bringing up this kind of cool thing, which is my dad had just died. And
did he come to you?
so there's these things my dad used to say, okay? And they drove me nuts. He used to say, like, trust no one. That was his mantra. We had a song when we were kids. It was before we got out of the car. He'd go, who do you trust? And we go, no one. And he'd go, who do you trust? And we go, Daddy. I told that once in a ACA meeting, and everyone went,
yeah.
You know, when you're able to like make people that have seen it all be like, damn. And then he would say, you know, everyone's either a liar, thief, or a worm. They're all just liars, thieves, and worms. And after the ayahuasca session, I cried about him and sort of and I sort of did have this little epiphany, like, because I do like wolf therapy. There's a place called Wolf Connection. You do, you know, it's kind of this cool animal therapy thing. And you study how the pack works. Alpha starts preparing the beta to be the alpha at like 3 years old. Their death is not scary to them. It is something they just prepare for, they accept. It's like the whole idea is that you are better than the generation that came before you. So it's like, my dad was such a this, but I'm a this. It's like, well, that's how it's supposed to be. The third iPhone's supposed to be better than the second one. Everything's supposed to be better. So how can I be me if he wasn't him? Whatever. I had sort of just like a good like, this is it. It's passing of the, like, I'm becoming the alpha is what I started thinking. And the next day I was talking to my dude and I was like, yeah, because everyone's just a liar, thief, and a worm. I was like, whoa, that was weird. And maybe I just melted some resistance to who he was or had some acceptance for who he was and was able to not go like, well, he always said this and he always said this. I was able to just kind of go like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to have some things in me from him and I can just allow them and go like, whose voice was that? That was weird. And maybe there's a lot of voices in my head that aren't mine, positive and negative. So I can just go like, oh, I'm not an idiot. I'm not stupid. I'm not ugly. I'm not this. I'm not unlovable. Like those are just like voices that I heard. It's like a shitty radio station in the back.
It actually goes back to what you said earlier, which is we're all programmed, or we're all doing what we're programmed to do until we reprogram ourselves. So it sounds like
it's just like it was like a software update. It felt like a software update for my brain, kind of thing. Which is like, why wouldn't I be running on the old software?
Well, the biggest software update for your brain is going to be when you have a child, and I'm very eager to see how that.
What am I in for, man?
No, it's going to be great. It's you know, it's very healing, and I'm sure it will be fantastic. And I look forward to being you know, called if you need any help with anything.
I definitely. Oh yeah,
I won't take your kid to the park though. That's
I'm against fentanyl unless it's when I give birth. In which case, I'm very pro. Wait, let's take back what I said about fentanyl. Can you guys send it to me? But yeah, I just don't want to tear. I'm definitely worried about that. I don't know why.
Don't worry about that.
What are you hopeful for, and what type of in-utero programming are you doing?
It's a really good question.
Are you playing classical music for the baby? Some people do that. You don't
I'm
have
not
to
doing any of that shit. I'm so sorry. And it's not. I play a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. You know, so they'll be hearing a lot of stuff. My thing is I'm taking it really easy, and there's a couple people in my life that I love, but are mercurial and cause adrenaline every now and then. And I'm really just trying to not make adrenaline and cortisol while I'm pregnant. So I'm leaving 30 minutes early. I was sitting outside for 25 minutes in front of your place because I was just like, I'm not gonna. And that's also a big ACA thing.
You don't want to rush.
Yeah, a big ACA thing is you don't leave a buffer. So if you have to be somewhere at 4 and it takes half an hour, you leave at 3:30. And the program is going, but what if we left at 4:15 and allowed for needing to pee and traffic and all this other stuff? So it's like, it's sort of little things like that. I'm like, if I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to leave an hour earlier than I need to because I'm going to get there. I'm going to have to go to the bathroom. I'm going to have to drink water. I'm going to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be rushing around and setting my kid up for like adrenal addiction. That's a big one. You know what? I'm lying. I have a playlist of whale sounds. I've been listening to whale sounds. Yes. You know, because babies speak sonar. The dolphin births. I really want to have a dolphin birth. And
what's a dolphin birth?
It's because dolphins know when a woman is pregnant. They'll like swim up and you can give birth in the water and the dolphins are like,
oh my.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a hippie, but I didn't know about that.
That's where you draw the line.
I gave birth on the floor out there.
And so I was a lot of whale sounds I've been doing. And I'm not someone, this is kind of an ACA thing too, where I never like listen to music very much. Just when I'm home, it just distracts me a little bit.
Oh, it's a program thing.
or not a program, just sort of like, some, not,
you mean constantly needing stimulation like that?
Not thinking to do something fun. And not occurring to you that like things can be fun and life can be fun. And like while you're doing chores, you can like play music. Like I grew up in a very austere kind of, I'm in the car and it doesn't occur to me to put music on. I have to be
so putting music on is a positive thing.
Or I'll go, I need to get smarter, so I need to listen to podcasts instead. We're always studying. We're always getting smarter. Instead of being like, why don't I just listen to the Dirty Dancing soundtrack like an idiot? And my brain goes, you're wasting time. And it goes, no, you're not. So there's a little bit of that conversation.
Joy. You're trying to find joy.
So what is this of you speak? So I have a playlist of Hans Zimmer like soundtrack. I love soundtrack, like the Dunkirk soundtrack. Stuff like that. I love like scores. And so I listen to a lot of that. Lyrics just distract me a little bit. My brain starts to want to write jokes. And if I'm listening to old music, I'm like, oh, this is what we were programmed for. Now I have to write a joke about this garbage song from the 90s. No wonder we're like this. Like, it just makes my brain a little too overactive. So I always look for like music that doesn't have lyrics necessarily.
So you're resetting nervous system, slowing down.
And I've been doing sunlight. I go out in the sunlight. It's maybe more of an absence of things than presence of things. I've really cut down on using cosmetics and sunscreens and a lot of shit that I was putting on my body and face that I, thought was
speaking Jonathan's love language.
That I thought it was self-care, but turns out I was just like dousing myself with chemicals. And the way really like honoring what I'm craving, it's actually been being pregnant.
Oh, that's very,
so healing from disordered eating because your body is like, today you're having 7 blueberries and 22 strawberries and 6 eggs and 2 spoonfuls of brown sugar from the thing. And like, that's what you're eating today. And you're like sick. So it's like kind of radical surrender on that front.
Can I offer something that's we've never done on this podcast and is a little bit out there, but we've never also had I don't think we've ever had a pregnant person on the podcast either, have we?
Please.
I don't know, just based on everything you shared, it feels, and being the third kid and maybe potentially being questioned if you were intended, it feels like putting your hands on your little boy and just saying, you are loved, you are a gift.
He wants you to do a positive affirmation on the podcast.
This is going to make me cry. I haven't even met him yet. How do we know he's lovable?
Well,
castable.
I just think in terms of ancestral traditions and curses and passing it down, break that cycle of questioning. You manifested him. You knew that he was coming when you were 40, and it sounds like he needs to hear that.
He just did a little kick.
Is Jonathan the father? And we didn't know it.
God. It's okay. Should we tell her now? Is this a weird time to tell her? Oh God. I'm going to try to not make a joke or be silly about it because that's my instinct when things are I'm being vulnerable or might embarrass myself. Do I look down at it or did I look in the camera?
In your mind's eye and whatever feels good.
Little buddy, you are loved. How'd I do? I'm like, what's my grade?
He is loved. He is a gift and he is wanted.
And can I tell you, it's so interesting because now I'm thinking about the things. I'm trying to be very careful, not with only what I put in my body, but not in a way that's like, I can't eat that. Like I'm stressing about the thing you shouldn't eat is worse than just eating the freaking thing or doing the thing. Is I've been watching a lot of like older movies that I loved when I was a kid.
Oh.
And Labyrinth is my favorite movie.
Oh.
So I have been doing a lot of David Bowie. You remind me of the babe with the power. So I kind of call him the babe with the power. And we dance around to Labyrinth quite a bit.
That's sweet. Well, we wish you only good things. And your new special just came out. So want to remind people, where can they see that?
I did one on Netflix a year ago. This is actually on OFTV. OnlyFans, don't panic. It's not porn. Although I might live stream my birth on there because it didn't happen here. But OFTV, it is completely free. It's not porn. This is the section of their streaming service it is comedy. They're doing a ton of uncensored comedy. So there's certain places right now that just They're going to go, can you cut that joke about trans people? Can you cut that joke about the vaccines? I do joke about my pregnancy being a vaccine injury. It's like in most networks are paid for by Big Pharma. I'm not a politician. You know, you can decide if I'm right or wrong. But so this was kind of the special that was like, this is all the stuff that I'm too scared to put other places. And it's completely free. I think comedy should be free. I don't think you should have to pay $5 or $10 or whatever for it. So yeah, oftv.com. It's their first stand-up special that they're doing, but they're going to do a ton more because there's kind of not a place right now for sort of more middle range comics. Like some of us are very lucky that we can get Netflix specials, you know, but there's so many comics right now, so many different voices out there that aren't big enough to get the Netflix special. But the you know, Comedy Central went away. There used to be these half hours. There used to be these shows where people could do 15 minutes, evening. Those have just kind of gone away. So they're really stepping in and elevating, paying, giving exposure to sort of that middle class of comics that you know, haven't quite ascended to that level yet, because the system that made, you know, the comics that you're friends with, me, that made us known, like that just doesn't exist anymore. Comedy Central doesn't exist. The Tonight Show, you know, doesn't have the impact it used to, you know? So how are comics going to tour and make money and get more known if platforms don't start giving them specials? So OFTV is doing that. And OFTV.com. It's right there. There's no catch.
Awesome. Also, I noticed you have a safety pin tattooed on this wrist. I'm hoping that the next time I see you, there'll be a diaper pin on the other wrist.
Do we still remember when? Okay, we should feel great about our parenting. People used to put safety pins on their children.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of us still did if we caught diapers. It was a thing.
My aunt said something the other day. She was like, they used to keep babies in drawers.
That's right.
Dresser drawers.
So your kid's gonna be fine.
Like what?
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And your podcast, Good For You, is available. And thank you so much.
What a pleasure. I'm such a fan and what an honor to be here.
Thank you. So much fun. I like someone who likes to label all the things like I do. I love it. Like she went through everything and she knows it and she names it and she sees it in other people. I love it. Had a great time.
There's a lot also that just came up in that episode. Like in each one of those chunks, I was like, you slowed it down when you were talking about sexual abuse. And I think it's important to say that there can be a lot of uncomfortable situations that may not read to what someone typically thinks of as quote unquote abuse, that are awkward or strange or cross boundaries in a way that leave an impression on people. And our understanding of what constitutes either capital T or lowercase t trauma is expanding, and people are realizing that they have had experiences that do impact them, and a lot of people have had this as part of their experience.
Yeah, I think probably, this might be a topic I'm sure people would probably really get a lot out of us talking about this. It's a very heteronormative notion that sexual abuse looks like penetrative sex between an adult and a child, or between two people who should not be having those interactions. There's a very, very large variety of situations, interactions, boundary crossings, and ambiguities, especially if we're talking about an adult and a child, that can literally lead to all of the features, all of the trauma that we normally would associate with sexual abuse in the way that many of us were conditioned to think about it, which again is actually heteronormative in its definition. So probably for another time, but really a delight to talk to Whitney Cummings. Follow us at Bialik Breakdown. And from our breakdown to the one we hope you never have, we'll see you next time.
It's Mayim Bialik's Breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. She's got a neuroscience PhD or two. One fiction, one and now she's gonna break down